Imagine being the strongest emperor of your time, yet losing to the demon queen and reincarnating into the body of an obese person in a world without cultivation. To make matters worse, in this world, gender roles are reversed, where women go out to work and men are responsible for taking care of the family and home. Our hero's current goal is to survive in this feminist world where women are true predators while regaining the cultivation he lost after reincarnating. To further complicate his situation, the woman who killed him and caused him to reincarnate in this world also followed him here. And like the Emperor, she is also looking to regain her power and have her revenge. Nevertheless, thanks to rigorous training, he manages to lose all the flabbiness and extra weight he had. However, this made him an even more desirable target for the women of this world, who pursue and compliment him in an almost savage manner. During a mission, he ends up discovering that women are not the only dangers in this world, as demonic monsters and martial arts still exist, albeit in a hidden form. Knowing all this, could our protagonist survive in this world of reversed roles? The story begins with our protagonist seeing a news article on the internet stating that the daddy gun style, according to some users, is ruining male mentality, and that in the past, women were considered intelligent and capable of reaching the heavens, but this style is tearing down that image. While reading all this nonsense on the internet, our hero wonders exactly where he has reincarnated. It has been 2 days since he arrived in this new world, and he still hasn't gotten used to the heavy body. Before coming to this world, he was the emperor of his generation. Every time he visits a news site, he only finds reports of robberies. In that world, there were no cultivators, just a modern world where the concepts of men and women were inverted. The power of that demon he had fought was so immense that they lost their bodies, but he survived by sheer luck. It was a miracle that his spirit managed to travel to another world and find a recently dead body to reincarnate into. Speaking of which, his name seemed to be Lin Mo. In his memories, he was a rich kid who studied at a first-class private school. Lin had no idea if that demon had also come back to life, but either way, before recovering his strength, he needed to live as Lin Mo. For that reason, even an emperor needed to go to school. Getting dressed, the young man left his room. Looking around, he assumed that his family wasn't bad at all. Even so, the house was smaller than his last fish tank. In his memories, it seemed that his parents died in an accident, and his grandmother had Alzheimer's, bedridden in the hospital. His distant aunt took on the role of guardian after he was abandoned, and together with her, his family also moved. Before he knew it, everything that belonged to him was already his aunt's, and his quality of life had deteriorated. Walking through the house, the boy approached a table. The one with hair like it was licked by a cow was named Yingjun, and the other was Zixuan. The boy's aunt appeared, saying that he arrived just in time to discuss his studies, and that Yanwu was right, mentioning that it was a joke. Hearing the name his aunt mentioned, the boy became thoughtful. In the memories of his body, his grandmother arranged a marriage for him before she developed Alzheimer's, and the girl's name was the same. However, she was shocked when she learned about it, and with disdain, asked how she could go out with someone as fat as him. While crossing the street, he was accidentally run over by a truck, and when this happened, his aunt canceled the engagement, thinking that it was unbelievable because the emperor of his generation would have to marry someone from this world based on another woman's decision. Still in the kitchen, his aunt asked if he was listening. The boy said it was nothing and told her not to arrange a marriage for him again. Observing Lin's expression, the woman thought he seemed different. Unexpectedly, he appeared to have an inexplicable aura of tyranny. Then Lin sat at the table, thinking that he had no appetite since starting his diet. But so that this body wouldn't starve, he had to take it easy. Taking a piece of food, he thought it smelled good. Then his cousin asked why he didn't study abroad since his companions knew how much he expressed his love to others. Lin wondered why he needed to talk to those insects when this emperor reigned for thousands of years. But as he needed to play the role of a normal person, he said he wouldn't go now because he was happy with that school. The boy said it didn't matter which school he attended as long as he got good grades. Continuing to eat, Lin thought he didn't want to talk to him. 1 hour later, the protagonist was inside a car and the person driving announced that they had arrived. His cousin, in turn, asked Lin not to get out together with him. With a look of disdain, the protagonist stared at him, leaving the boy scared by that gaze. Getting out of the car. Next, Lin was already standing in front of a building, mentioning that the architecture of that world was excellent. However, there were some issues. Each of those men stood out a lot as they were showing their pale legs, but at least the women seemed normal. In the background, 2 girls were talking about the protagonist's brother's legs, saying they were beautiful. With disdain, the boy thought that it was so unpleasant that it made him almost vomit. However, he should forget about that because he didn't know if that demon was still alive, and besides, he needed to strengthen his body before she appeared. While walking through the school, Lin found his classroom. In the background, someone seemed to mock the protagonist, saying his fiancée was there. His wife was sitting at the table while 2 girls were talking to her. Observing the protagonist, she didn't seem to like his presence. Lin thinks it was amazing how mortals could be so unbearable. The boy heads towards his desk, leaving Yanwu confused. While sitting, he wonders how he could resume his cultivation somehow. Someone grabs his shoulder, saying you should believe when he said he couldn't like her. Reality wasn't the same as on TV, mentioning that she seemed mature but should be deceived by the things she said. Remembering the girl, Lin thinks she should be that body's classmate. Continuing to speak, the girl questions how she could like a second-class person. Seeing Lin still silent, she supposes she had said too much, saying he still had a chance with Yanhui, who might like him if he lost some weight. Then the protagonist asks her to say what she wanted to say. The girl asks how he knew she was plotting something, and Lin mentions that she wasn't that kind to act that way. Then the girl really wanted to ask a favor, asking him to play a game with her, saying it wouldn't take long, and as a reward, she would introduce him to a girl more beautiful than Yanhui. There was a mountain that couldn't be reached alone, but she had contacts to help climb directly, so she was thinking of going during the summer. Mentioning that the place was impressive at night, he would regret it if he refused to go there. Lin thinks of a rumor that high mountains attract spiritual energy, and that mountain was the closest to that region, so there was a high chance it had energy at the top. Also, it was a great opportunity for that body to lose weight by climbing the mountain. Accepting the proposal, he mentions he wasn't good at games, making her happy. The girl says there would be a match against an idiot from class 3 who loves pretending to be good, so after class, they could use the computers in the computer club. Sometime later in the computer room, the girl mentions she had reserved the room just for them, so no one would bother them. Sitting in the chair, she asks Lin to log into a user account. Then the protagonist enters his password, successfully logging into his account. Inside the game, the boy looks at a window, saying it was a competitive action game with an immortal theme. The girl appears, saying she had called the boss of that realm because he would help them. Then the boss appears, mentioning that she really brought a man, apparently liking the protagonist because he was her friend's classmate. Cutting the atmosphere, she says she would start the 3v3 PvP mode. Starting to run, the girl asks them to be quiet while she takes out the enemy team. Then the protagonist's friend asks him to hide while she goes to check. Lin thinks that only legendary beings in his world could be immortal, but cultivation and everything from his world were similar to the game. Supposing there was a chance that world had immortals, so we should be careful. While sitting, a notification appears that someone had died. That girl from before appears, apparently stressed. Starting to run again, she says she made a mistake and now would take revenge. However, she ends up dying again, repeating the cycle of running again, but now the protagonist's friend would help. Even so, it doesn't help at all. Outside the game, the protagonist's friend is furious because not even the boss of that realm was managing to defeat that person. Telling the protagonist to be careful because Flying Feather was on the way, but Lin was completely calm. While running, the boy thinks he had developed his fighting instincts for thousands of years, capable of using them even in games. During all that, the other team was still chasing the protagonist while two girls fawned over the person playing. Then the girl says he couldn't escape her. Looking back, Lin sees someone following him. Stopping running, he thinks he was an emperor and therefore had never been pursued. Noticing that Lin had seen her, the woman quickly hides. The protagonist in turn affirms that it was a quick reaction and that body couldn't win since in that game the attacks were hard to use. Outside the game, Lin seemed to use an ability. The woman observing the protagonist mentions that he was a novice who had no idea where he was. Therefore, that was a positive point as she approached the boy. Quickly, Lin uses the keyboard and mouse, launching an attack at the woman. Suddenly, he hits her and a notification of a dead player appears. On the other side, they were surprised that the protagonist managed to win. Standing up from her chair, Lin's friend says she didn't know he was that good. Noticing him still, she asks if he is okay. Lin thinks he had no idea that a body like that could be so damaged by a simple use of spiritual energy. Returning to the game, one of his friends asked to come back, but she didn't have more time, thinking that she had finally found him, wondering why he always kept running away. But this time, she would kill him going towards the protagonist. Meanwhile, the boy kept running non-stop. Noticing the girl had found him again, he thinks he should boost the lower part of his body again, throwing his sword towards the woman. Then she questions if the boy wanted to hit her from that far away. At the same instant, her leg gets hit. She ends up falling to the ground. Looking at the sword in her leg, she wonders if it was a warning to stop following him. Outside the game, one of his friends says they should stop chasing him. The girl, in turn, asks if she knew the other side, asking to contact them right away. Sitting in the chair, she murmurs the protagonist's name. On the other side, the protagonist's friend receives a call from those girls wanting to see her. Approaching Lin, and his friend says he was amazing, suggesting they play a few more matches, but the boy didn't want to play anymore, asking not to forget the promise he made before. Sometime later, Lin was already near his house. In his room, the boy lies down, mentioning that his body was very fragile. The next day, while going to school, his cousin calls him, asking him to explain to his classmates that the marriage with Yanhui wasn't real. Then the protagonist says there was no need to explain what was false. While walking away, his cousin says he was very arrogant. Inside the classroom, his friend notices his presence, asking if he knew who that girl from before was named Zhao Yutang. Mentioning that, surprisingly, she was from their school. It seemed he went through a lot since he lost his love, mentioning that the girl wanted to see him and he didn't need to worry because she wouldn't do anything to a guy. But even before finishing the sentence with a threatening look, the protagonist observes him. Suddenly, he doesn't finish the sentence, mentioning that it wasn't Momo Baby. Then a girl walks towards the protagonist's table. That was Yanhui, saying they needed to clarify things and should say it was just a fake marriage. Lin's friend says she was going too far after all. Linmo was just a boy and should have more compassion. The girl questions what that had to do with anything and if she liked the protagonist. Entering the conversation, the boy says that whether it was true or false, there was no possibility of him being with the girl, asking her to leave. Yanhui says he was being very arrogant and didn't know how much it bothered her, so he should never say he was going to marry again. In the background, Woi says Lin was very strong because he hadn't cried until now, and the other guy says that if it were him, he would leave the school immediately. Then someone enters the room. That was the girl who had lost before, accompanied by 2 more people. In the background, people mentioned that was Zhao Yutang. Rumors said she caused a lot of trouble, and everyone who got involved with her left the school. Approaching Lin, the girl calls the protagonist. Apparently, Yanhui was her sister, asking if she wanted something. Then the girl calls Momo Baby, which was the protagonist's profile name in the game, asking him to follow her. Meanwhile, Lin, irritated, remains seated in the chair, thinking that he was an emperor and not Momo Baby. In the background, those 2 boys ask how he got close to Yutang and why she was calling him Momo Baby. His friend, in turn, apologizes because the girl wanted to play with the protagonist alone. He just needed to go out with her, and then he could do whatever he wanted. Leaving the room, Lin murmurs that those people were very annoying. At the door of his class, Yutang waited for him, thinking she didn't expect that Momo Baby was a man instead of a woman, stating that it was fun because in the past women fought with combat skirts, but now it has become a norm for them. Then she starts asking Lin several questions, wondering if he was the one who defeated her in that game. She orders him to find her after class as she wanted to duel with him alone. But Lin says he didn't play that game and had only won by luck, saying he was going back to class. Irritated, Yutang wonders if the boy didn't know who she was. Then the other girl affirms that it was not surprising Lin wasn't afraid of her since he had no love left in his heart because he had been abandoned. Yutang, in turn, gives the order for her to bring the boy at noon. Returning to the classroom, a group of boys ask what Yutang had said to him. His friend says the girl had been attracted to the protagonist and just wanted to play with him alone, telling him not to worry because she would take him to Wuzhu Mountain on the weekend and also arrange some girls. With a threatening look, Lin tells her not to bring anyone else. Imagining supposedly illicit things, the girl feels embarrassed, saying many things and that he shouldn't be interested in her. Then another girl appears, saying that Yutang was waiting for the protagonist. However, Lin was no longer in the room. In the cafeteria, Lin was eating while people in the background mocked him, saying he ate too much. At the counter, the boy asks the server to wrap it up to go. Leaving the place, the protagonist thinks he still hadn't gotten used to that noisy world, and he shouldn't get upset because of that. In the background, someone was approaching the boy, murmuring various things about that body dying in a year, and if he wanted to survive, he should merge with her, and as a reward, she would fulfill his desires. While walking, people around observed her beauty. The woman says she had made the right decision. From now on, his 18 years of life would be part of hers, mentioning it was a pity that all the joys and sorrows he had experienced were just a drop in the ocean for her. After working hard for so long, she managed to defeat the Emperor, but it wasn't the ending she desired, and now the only thing she could do was revive the demon world. But the Emperor had many tricks up his sleeve, so he wouldn't die easily. Hence, she should be careful since he might have come to that world, affirming that this world was very interesting. She never got her father's approval in the demon world, no matter how hard she tried, just because she was a woman. Those men looked down on her and only wanted to possess her until the day she put on a mask of evil spirits, killing them so they would fear her. However, in that place, men are at a disadvantage and cultivation wasn't bad despite the spiritual power being scarce. Moreover, she was beautiful to the point that men followed her. But it had been a while since that fat boy was after her, and as a woman, it was good to be direct. Looking back, their eyes meet. The girl, in turn, asked him to stop following her because there would be nothing between them. However, our boy walks past her, ignoring the poor girl. Embarrassed, the girl thinks she should regain her strength before leaving that world, mentioning that the boys in that world were very shy. So Lin must have been embarrassed, refusing to admit he was following her. Therefore, he hadn't said anything to avoid embarrassment. Returning to the protagonist, he was apparently annoyed, wondering why that girl was following him. Noticing Lin was heading to the rooftop, she thinks he should find another place to be alone, but remembers that normal students never went there. People in that world are spiritually and physically weak, questioning if Lin was going to jump off the rooftop. However, that wasn't her business. Still, she remained bothered, remembering that the friend of the original owner of her body had also jumped off a building. Heading towards the rooftop, she thinks she would fulfill the will of that body. Arriving at the top of the building, she sees the protagonist at the edge of the rooftop. Then she tries to use an ability to immobilize him. However, she'd have forgotten she had no spiritual power. Meanwhile, Lin calmly thinks that it was quite cold up there, so it would be better to go down for lunch. Then the girl appears, asking the protagonist to wait. While grabbing his belly, Lin asks what she was doing. Lifting the boy, she asks the protagonist to come down, but she is surprised by the boy's weight, falling to the ground with him, where she ends up breaking a rib. On top of her, Lin says he didn't even have time to respond, questioning what she was doing. The girl says she was just helping because he was going to jump in an isolated place, thinking she had broken a rib because of him. Surprised, Lin thinks that the girl thought he was going to jump off the building, supposing it was because in that world men were fragile while women were strong, extending his hand to help her, asking her to control her imagination because he had only gone to get some air and had no intention of jumping off the building. Besides, he wasn't interested in her, leaving the girl embarrassed, telling him never to appear in front of her again. As he walks away, Lin thinks that woman had refused the help of an emperor without even knowing, and since she didn't want help, there was nothing he could do. Back in the classroom, his friend asks where he had been, mentioning that Yutang was looking for him and telling him not to leave after class. The protagonist in turn says it was all her fault, so she should solve it herself. But the girl says she would go with him after class to play with Yutang, and if he let her win, it should be enough to leave him alone. Even so, Lin says he wouldn't go, thinking he didn't want to lose to a little girl, even in a game. His friend keeps trying to convince the protagonist, but the boy says the problem was hers. The girl saying she would do anything for him. Lin still decides he wouldn't go, so his friend thinks she was in trouble. Sometime later, the day passes. Standing up, the protagonist tells them to leave and not to forget their promise at Wushu Mountain. While walking away, Lin remembers something, recalling that he had fallen on top of that girl, wondering if she was okay. The human body is very fragile, so she probably ended up breaking some ribs. Since human lives in that world were precious, he could end up being arrested, which would cause a huge problem. Looking for the girl, Lin thinks he should check on her. Meanwhile, she was still on the rooftop, stating that that body was very weak and couldn't get up. Besides, it was very windy, and she was hungry, thinking about shouting for help but wouldn't do it even if she died. She didn't expect that could happen. An invincible demon who defeated the emperor was taken down by a fat boy. Then someone approaches the girl. Noticing it was Lin, the girl asks why he came back. Kneeling down, the protagonist observes her, thinking she didn't look well. Then he places his hand on her back, saying she had broken some ribs, mentioning she was very weak and needed to exercise, but the girl says it happened because of him. While Lin takes off his coat, the Empress, embarrassed, asks what the protagonist was going to do. Covering her, the boy mentions it was windy on the rooftop, asking her to wear his coat. Making a call, he says he would call an ambulance, but the Empress says she didn't need his jacket. The protagonist already knew she didn't want to wear his jacket because he was fat, but she remembered that her body was fragile and could take it off when the ambulance arrived. However, for the girl, it wasn't for that reason. She didn't expect the protagonist to be so kind. This world has a standard of beauty for men, thinking she didn't know why Lin helped her, but would keep an eye on him anyway. Sometime later, the ambulance arrives. While the Empress is on the stretcher, two girls notice the commotion. Embarrassed, the girl thinks she would never forget that day. At night, the protagonist was already near his house. Entering, his cousin asks why Yutang had come to talk to him. Then Lin says he would say it only once. Zixuan, in turn, thinks that Fat Boy had a sharp look, mentioning he was more aggressive lately, saying that Yutang must not have gone after him on her own and must have caused some trouble. Because of that, he would ask his mother to throw him out of the house. Then Lin, questioning what he was talking about, mentions that it was his house. Zixuan, about to slap the boy, says he had asked for it. With no effort, Lin grabs his hand. While squeezing his arm, he thinks he was very weak, so weak that it wasn't even worth continuing. On the floor, the boy says it hurt, going to tell his father that Lin had hit him. Appearing in the kitchen, his father asks how he dared to hit his cousin, saying he would deal with him. But with no effort, the protagonist also grabs the man's hand, surprised that Lin Mo had grabbed him so easily. Lin in turn says he would give him advice to never mess with him. Crying, the man says he was an abuser, calling the protagonist's aunt, saying he was causing trouble. Arriving in the room, she tells them to be quiet. Staring at Lin, she thinks the boy was different, saying she didn't want to know what happened and just to apologize to his uncle. Lin in turn thinks that she was the first person to ask an emperor to apologize, saying he wasn't wrong and therefore wouldn't apologize. However, she says that if he didn't apologize, he wouldn't receive his vacation allowance, but the boy says he didn't need it. Entering his room, Lin wonders if she was talking about money, remembering that without it, he wouldn't be able to go to Wushu Mountain. He had nothing to sell in that house and no savings. Thinking of selling some clothes and shoes, Lin opens his computer, surprised that a buyer responded so quickly. 3 girls in the comments of the post were asking personal questions and if the items still had his scent. Surprised, the protagonist thinks he was never afraid, not even of demons, but those women scared him. Even so, he would sell to make money, wondering why money was the first problem because he should first regain his strength. The body is the foundation of cultivation, and if he could absorb spiritual energy, money wouldn't matter. A few minutes later, the boy was completely exhausted, and without spiritual power, the body couldn't handle it, so he had to forge his body from scratch. Then he receives a call from his friend, saying she wanted to talk about Wushu Mountain, mentioning that her friend said he was going there and asked if it wasn't better to go another day. Lin says it wasn't a problem, and they could go anyway, so the girl says the bus would leave in the morning, so he shouldn't be late. The next day, the protagonist goes to the table for breakfast. Zixuan asks why he woke up early and if Yanhui hadn't asked to go out with him, but the boy remains silent. His cousin, in his thoughts, wonders why he wasn't responding and if he was planning something. saying he could continue eating like a beggar because his bus had arrived. Near the bus, Yanhui calls the boy, saying she was scared so they should get on quickly. Inside the bus, she says Lin has been different since she rejected him, mentioning that last night he pushed Zixuan while arguing with his father. Yanhui, in turn, says she always knew it wasn't a good idea to take Lin to Wuzhu Mountain, affirming that he was also going, and the other girl says he looks like a whale pacifier, so he wouldn't be able to climb. Then the protagonist's friend appears, saying they were in the same class and shouldn't talk about him like that. The girl thinks she didn't expect Lin to come, but he wasn't afraid of Yanhui, so she would stay with him so he wouldn't feel alone. Then Lin appears on the bus. While going to his seat, Yanhui stops the protagonist, asking why he pushed Zixuan. Interfering in the matter, the protagonist's friend says it must be a misunderstanding because Lin was a calm person, calling the boy to the front of the bus because it had a beautiful view. At the front of the bus, she asks the driver to stop at the next stop to pick up another person. The protagonist, in turn, hopes that when they reach Wuzhu Mountain, he wouldn't be disappointed. Looking to the side, he notices a girl riding a motorcycle, stopping the motorcycle in front of the bus. Suddenly, the bus is forced to brake. Removing the helmet, it was Yutang. The protagonist's friend gets nervous, fearing she stopped the bus to go after Lin Mo. Leaving her seat, she says she would talk to her. Questioning what she was doing there, Yutang says she was looking for that fat boy. Observing Lin, the girl mentions that if it weren't for his size, she would never have noticed him. Then everyone starts laughing at the protagonist. Yutang says he shouldn't go to Wuzhu Mountain and that it was better to go with her to play video games. And if he did that, she could make his wife return to the relationship. But the boy didn't want to know about it, asking her to leave him alone. Then Yutang asks if she was bothering him, thinking that if it weren't for him, she would never have lost even once in her life, questioning if he would go with her or not. Then Lin seems surprised, noticing that the girl's necklace had a bit of aura, thinking that his refining technique was a bit poor, but that was something difficult to craft in that world, wondering if cultivators still existed, saying he would play with her after climbing the mountain. Then the protagonist's friend suggests they all go to the mountain. Yutang asks if Lin was really willing to climb that place. It seems he wasn't popular and was fat, so she would watch him try to climb that mountain. Meanwhile, another guy appears saying he has a seat next to him, suggesting she sit beside him. But the girl doesn't care and calls one of her friends to take care of her motorcycle, asking if Lin had that game because she wanted to play with him now. However, the protagonist says that if he won, he wanted something in return. Accepting the offer, Yutang says that if she lost, he would have to be her servant forever, ignoring another guy while talking to Lin. Then the other man asks Zixuan if Lin was good at games and why Yutang insisted on playing with him. Zixuan, in turn, thinks he has no idea what's going on and the protagonist is a nuisance. Back to Lin, the boy was playing that game with Yutang again. Noticing an opening, he prepares an attack. Yutang is surprised because he was attacking at high speed. Taking the hit head-on, the system informs that Momo Baby is the winner. Outside the game, Yutang still can't believe she lost, asking how he managed to have such incredible precision. But the protagonist says every move of his was calculated, and that game is very easy. Then the girl thinks he was a genius, but little did she know he used his cultivation to stimulate his brain. Since Lin had won, he should ask for what he wanted. Lin, in turn, asks for 10,000 in cash. Yutang asks if that was all because she could make his ex-fiancé come back to him, and if he was willing, he should become her training partner from today. Ignoring the girl, Lin still asks for the transfer, thinking he had secured the money to forge that body. Taking out her phone, Yutang makes the transfer. Moreover, she adds her phone number, so he should answer if she called. But he shouldn't call her or give her number to anyone. The protagonist thinks that even as an emperor, he didn't have such arrogance as hers. Standing up from the chair, the girl says there was very little space, ordering Yanhui to move to the front, making the girl nervous, thinking she was doing that after so much effort to sit next to Zixuan. Standing up, Yutang tells her to hurry up. Yanhui thinks about scolding her sister but can't do it in front of everyone. Then Zixuan says that Lin wanted to say something to her, so she should see what it was. Standing up, the girl goes towards the protagonist. In his thoughts, the boy is happy because he could sit next to Yutang. Trying to introduce himself to the girl, Zixuan only gets a sharp rebuke from Yutang, telling him to shut up, thinking that if she knew that boy was so insufferable and wore so much perfume, she would have preferred to sit with the protagonist. Arriving at Wuzhu Mountain, the students are surprised by how high the place is. Then the protagonist's friend tells everyone to follow her and not lag behind. Half an hour later, Lin Mo, observing those boys, thinks they were much worse off than he was. When he managed to recover his powers, he would punish them every day for centuries. The protagonist's friend, noticing that no one was there to help him, thinks she couldn't assist him because if someone saw her with him, she might get strange looks. 20 minutes later, Lin Mo was still climbing the mountain, thinking he couldn't go any further because he had the least endurance in the group. Those boys seemed delicate, but were actually quite fit. Noticing that Lin couldn't continue, his friend thinks that since she brought him to that place, she should help him. Asking if the boy needed help, but Lin Mo says she could go on her way, because he could still continue. Thinking that this exhaustion was nothing compared to the things he went through in his previous life. The protagonist's friend wonders why he was making such an effort for that, saying she would go ahead, and if he couldn't climb anymore, he could let her know. People in the background are surprised because the protagonist had already climbed halfway. The other boys, already exhausted, couldn't continue. While thinking about giving up, Lin Mo, determined, continues to climb. Near the top, the protagonist notices a group of people returning. The other girl is surprised because he managed to get there alone and was very resilient. The protagonist's friend, saying it was very high, suggests they go back and go to a restaurant. However, Lin says they could go because he would reach the top. Irritated, his friend questions if he wanted to die, but the other girl says to just let him go. 20 minutes later, the boy finally reaches the top of the mountain. Yutang, who was already at the top, is surprised that he actually managed to climb. But it was a pity that he lagged behind most of the time, and when he reached the top, the others had already returned, and he had been alone the whole time. Looking up, the boy observed the stars. Thinking that up there had a lot of ki, although it was not enough to recover his power, at least he could start training. With this, he would get ahead of that venerable demon. As long as he had the opportunity to train, no matter the time, he would always come back up there. Then Yutang touches his shoulder, asking what he was doing, and the protagonist says he was just looking at the view. The girl thinks he is very annoying and doesn't talk much, and the protagonist, in his thoughts, asserts that in his world as an emperor, he would have killed her many times already. Then Yutang tells him to come down because that place was hers now. Lin mentions that he was very tired, so she should help him down. Yutang says she wouldn't bother him anymore that day, handing the protagonist a snack. From now on, he would be her companion, and since she was bored, she would go down first. Opening the wrapper, he realizes it was leftovers from the girl's snack. Mentioning that in his previous life he had eaten many beast carcasses, so that was nothing. Sitting down to meditate, the boy thinks he should start by cleansing the marrow. Sometime later, it gets late. The protagonist's friend on the phone with him asks if the boy really wasn't coming back. Lin Mo says that place was pleasant, so he would stay during the holidays. Fiddling with his phone, he thinks he should notify his aunt. Calling her without any ceremony, he already informs her that he would be away for a few days during the holidays. Ending the call, the receptionist asks what he could do for the protagonist. Then the young man asks how much an individual room costs for 2 months, and the man says it was 8,000 yen. Thus, Lin Mo continued his training during the holidays, day after day, climbing the mountain non-stop. The training was rigorous, but the fruits would be worth it. Then 2 months pass, and the protagonist's friend says she was arriving and if his bags were ready. Thinking that she couldn't talk to him during the holidays, and because of that, Yutang was always bothering her. So she had to take him to Yutang no matter the circumstances. Meanwhile, Lin Mo looks at himself in the mirror, thinking that after 2 months, the spiritual energy in his body was still weak. Appearing like a complete Giga Chad, he says he should still continue being a mediocre student. Sometime later, the protagonist's friend says she finally managed to find him. But when she looks at the boy, she is surprised by his beauty. Supposing she had mistaken the room, imagining having a family with that man. With a remorseful look, the protagonist notices the girl staring at him. Embarrassed, she starts to leave, thinking the protagonist must think she was a pervert. Then Lin asks where she was going because she wasn't mistaken. The girl, in turn, asks if he was a friend of Lin Mo, but he says he was Lin Mo. However, she doesn't believe his words, supposing they had the same name. But the protagonist says he had just lost some weight, asking why she was so surprised, although the boy had changed drastically. Everything about him was completely different. Grabbing the bags, Lin says they should go. Then the girl thinks that from his cold look and way of speaking, he was definitely Lin Mo, thinking she wasn't dreaming and the boy had changed a lot, affirming that it was worth not treating him badly in the past, asking him to carry her backpack. However, another girl appears, offering help to the protagonist. Quickly, his friend approaches the car, opening the door for the young man. Inside the car, she mentions that he now looked very handsome, asking if he had been climbing the mountain all this time. His efforts certainly paid off, and when Yanui saw him now, she would regret breaking up with him. So now many girls would be kind to him, but he had to understand that it was all falsehood, so Lin asked her to just shut up. Afraid, his friend wonders if the protagonist hated her for not climbing the mountain with him. If she had been kinder before, he might have fallen in love with her, and they would have a perfect love. However, there was still an opportunity because she was still the closest to Lin, saying that he must have been through a lot and that they should go out to eat something, but the boy just wanted to be taken home. Sometime later, the young man was already at his house, and his friend says she would see him in a few days. Then the other girl asks if she wasn't going to take the protagonist to see Yutang. But Yunshu says she wouldn't take him anymore, thinking she couldn't take a beautiful lamb to the wolf's den. The only thing she needed to do was use Lin's account to play. Then Lin Mo enters his house. The whole family is surprised by his appearance, asking who he was and how he had entered. But the boy says he is Lin Mo and had just lost weight. Even so, the Sixuan doesn't believe it was him because even if he lost weight, he wouldn't be that handsome. Then his mother asks him to stop yelling, asking if the boy had had some surgery. The boy mentions that she had all his money, so he couldn't have done that, questioning if he would receive his allowance that semester. His aunt said she would cover all his expenses and also buy a new uniform. But if he did anything bad to his cousin or uncle again, she wouldn't give him another cent. Standing up, Lin says he was already satisfied, and his aunt thinks he really was the protagonist. The next day, the young man was in a car with his cousin going to school. Zixuan asks why the driver was driving slower this time, so the girl says she would go faster, thinking she couldn't help but look at the protagonist because he was very handsome. So she's one to keep observing the boy. Then Lin gets out of the car. Everyone around is surprised by his beauty, wondering who that boy was. His cousin, envious, questions why Lin was drawing so much attention. Noticing that the girls were taking pictures of him, the young man thinks something wasn't right. Soon after, he enters his classroom. Heading to his seat, another girl wonders if he was a transfer student. Lin, in turn, thinks he had just lost weight, but just because of that, he was already a little better than normal. However, he usually wouldn't attract so much attention, wondering if it was because of his aura. At the classroom door, a commotion was happening. Yutang, holding the protagonist's friend, says she would give her 3 minutes to bring that fat boy to her, but Yunshu says there was no fat boy anymore. The girl mentions that she would regret it if she continued lying, so Yunshu says she would tell her where Lin was. Pointing to the protagonist, she says he was Lin who had lost weight over the holidays. Observing the boy, Yutang seems not to believe it. Furious, she says that guy could never be Lin, but Yunshu was telling the truth. The protagonist in turn says the girl wasn't lying, saying she would train with him whenever she wanted and to meet after class. Then Yutang asks who he was. Again, Yunshu says he was Lin and had lost weight over the holidays while climbing Wuzu Mountain. In her thoughts, Yutang wonders if it really was the boy, questioning if it really was that fat boy while the boy asks her not to call him that anymore. Noticing he had the same voice and behavior, she affirms that he really was Lin, saying it didn't matter if he was fat or thin because he should wait for her after class. Yunshu says it had been someone else who had played with her before and Lin had joined just to complete the group, so the protagonist wasn't very good at games. With a threatening look, Yutang observes her, asking if she dared to say that Lin didn't know how to play, mentioning that yesterday she had used Lin's account to try to deceive her, so she was the most arrogant person who tried to do that. While leaving, Yunshu asks for a chance to explain, thinking that now Yutang would never leave her alone. 2 girls appear, asking how she knew it was Lin. Even if it was the boy, he couldn't have become so handsome, so he must have had some surgery. Then the teacher appears, asking everyone to take their seats because class was about to start, saying she was curious to know how their holidays were. However, she ends up being surprised, asking who that student in the back was. Yunshu, raising her hand, says it was Lin who had lost weight during the holidays. Surprised, the teacher says he had changed a lot and must have worked hard to achieve it, asking if the boy wanted to sit at the front that semester. Quickly, a girl responds no, mentioning that Yunshu had promised they would change places with her. Another says she had grown a lot during the holidays, so she should also go to the back. Yunshu thinks they were trying to take her seat, but wouldn't let that happen. The teacher, asking them to stop arguing, says the first person to change places would be Yunshu. While 2 girls remove her from her seat, the protagonist's friend pleads to let her stay in her seat. Another guy asks Zixuan if Lin had had surgery to become so handsome, and the boy responds that there was no other way than that. The teacher says the odd numbers would stay in the same position and the evens would change with the adjacent ones, saying that Li Jiang would sit with Lin. The other girl asks if Jiang was really going to sit with the protagonist, and the girl says it's okay because she couldn't let Yunshu have him for herself. Looking at his classmate beside him, the young man notices that he was a bit chubby and quiet, so there would be no one to bother him. Yunshu, standing at the front, cries for losing her seat. Then Lin Mo stands up from his seat. A group of girls start flattering the young man, saying they would be exhausted if they had to climb the mountain every day, and another asks if he could give some advice to her brother. Yunshu thinks they are all fake because when Lin was fat, no one talked to him, saying that unlike them, she never treated the protagonist badly when they first met. Lin coldly asks them to get out of his way. Quickly, the girls make room. Another girl says that the protagonist looks very handsome with that attitude. Noticing Zixuan getting stressed, the girl mentions that he was jealous, but it wouldn't help because they preferred Lin. Back to the protagonist, the young man was in the cafeteria. A girl waves at him, saying he could sit in her place because she had to leave, but Lin declines the offer, thinking he wasn't sure if it was safe near those mortals, mentioning that the eyes of those women were nothing less than deceitful. In the background, Yan Hui questions if it was really the protagonist. Zixuan asks if she regretted breaking up with him now that he was handsome, and the girl responds that she wasn't that superficial. Another girl appears, saying she wanted to go after Lin Mo, asking if she could help her, mentioning that it didn't matter if he had surgery or not because she always liked him for his personality. Then Yan Hui calls her a hypocrite. Hearing what she said, she thinks hypocrisy was thinking that was surgery, and if she could get those beautiful legs of Lin's, she wouldn't care if they were fake or not, saying she would go after the boy alone. Meanwhile, Lin Mo was walking through the school. Then Yan Hui appears, saying she was there to apologize for everything, mentioning that it had been sudden for her, and she still didn't want to get married. Accepting the apology, the protagonist walks away. Asking Lin to wait, the young man questions if she had more to say, affirming that she really felt sorry for everything she had said. Lin continues to walk, making Yan Hui wonder why he was so cold, supposing she might have been the reason he changed so much. Outside the school, Lin Mo hopes no one is on the rooftop. While walking, he encounters the girl whose ribs he had broken, wondering if she wanted to steal his spot on the rooftop again. Looking back, the girl notices that Lin has been following her for some time, mentioning that he looked like the protagonist, but that man was more handsome. Then Lin walks past the girl, feeling relieved because she thought the young man would talk to her, questioning if he was also going to the rooftop. Catching up with the boy, she notices he was climbing the stairs. Quickly passing him, she heads to the front. Noticing that the girl was in a hurry, he wonders if she really wanted to steal his spot, questioning how a mere mortal wanted to do that. Their eyes meet, and each perceives the other's intention. Quickly, they start running to secure their places. The girl thinks the protagonist was very annoying, questioning if he shouldn't behave like a gentleman. Also, how could he run so fast, mentioning that she wanted to give him an advantage, but if she lost, it would be a disgrace for the women of that world. Meanwhile, a girl watches the commotion. Back to the two, the girl asks why Lin was running, and the young man asks the same of her. Then she questions why he wasn't running after her, but the young man says he would never do that. Irritated, the woman says not to talk to her like that. A boy like him who didn't care about ladies could never get married. Lin Mo wonders how an emperor could think about marriage, a man of high status from a generation of great emperors, responding that she wasn't kind either because she was fighting just for the rooftop. Arriving at the rooftop door, they block the entrance. Suddenly, they start fighting to see who gets there first. Lin, in turn, thinks he would have to use brute force to clear his path, which ends up with him grabbing the girl's chest. She ends up feeling embarrassed. The protagonist, also embarrassed, feels that sensation, quickly reaching the rooftop first, saying that from now on, that place belonged to him. The girl questions how he dared to do that and if he knew who she was, mentioning that just now he had done that. Saying he had touched her, the protagonist approaches her, giving a slap to the poor girl, affirming that she'd had touched him first, thinking that he almost forgot that men in that world were fragile and couldn't act carelessly. Then the girl calls the protagonist shameless. Taking out his phone, Lin says if she didn't leave, he would call the police. The girl, in turn, says she was already getting angry. Recording the woman, the young man asks her to say what she had said before, but then she seems to remember something, recalling that women who hit men in that world were despised. And if she were caught doing that, she wouldn't be able to attend that school anymore. Thinking that he had taken advantage of that to hit her, even if he said it to someone, it was certain that the one who would be believed was the protagonist, saying that this time he would leave, but next time he wouldn't lose, claiming that it was very complicated to deal with men. Lin thinks she was happy to have gotten out of that situation, mentioning that the girl was very annoying. Remembering that there was an update on the news from this morning, she grabs her phone. Looking at the news, she ends up surprised. The news reported numerous chickens on a farm that were suspected of being infected with a virus, which ended up turning them into dried corpses. Observing that chicken, Lin Mo seems to recognize it, remembering that the demon from before had a sword that would suck any creature that touched it down to the bones. But in her final battle, that sword had exploded, and then her own sword also exploded trying to protect her, sending her to that world. Wondering if that demon was really dead. Since to become immortal, Lin had to follow the path of heaven, but in exchange, she only had to kill people to gain her power. That's why she needed to investigate what was happening. Sometime later, it was already sunset. As Lin was leaving, the girls were still fawning over the protagonist. Yunshun appears, saying she would accompany him to Yutang's house, but Lin Mo says it's not necessary. Even so, the girl insists on going, mentioning that Yutang and her sister were very dangerous. She tells the story of a time when a boy was tricked by his classmates and ended up with a tragic fate. However, the boy thinks he doesn't want to go to that place, asking Yunshun not to get too close to him, but the girl says he's interpreting things wrong. Entering, she's surprised to ask if he wouldn't see Yutang again, and the boy says he has more important things to do. Yunshu questions if he didn't know that she had been looking for him all summer, and the young man says they would discuss that later. The girl, in turn, asks him not to worry because she would explain everything to Yutang the next day, remembering that if she helped him, Lin might end up thanking her. Meanwhile, the young man was in a car, thinking that the farm was outside the city, and if that demon was there, he would eliminate her even if it damaged his soul. Sometime later, Lin Mo arrives at the location, thinking that he still had little soul left, but it would be necessary to use it. He apparently starts to use some magic. Looking at a house, he notices demonic Kai, thinking that it was extremely strong, assuming that demon had really survived. Looking to the side, he notices someone approaching. A person says they had seen the protagonist from afar. Taking off a helmet, it was Yutang asking what he was doing in the middle of nowhere. Lin, for his part, wonders how she got there, thinking it couldn't be a coincidence meeting in the middle of nowhere. She says she called a taxi to take her home, but on the way, she realized it was taking her out of the city, so she decided to get out of the car. Irritated, the girl asks if he still thinks he's that ugly fat guy from before. Now that he's handsome, he'll meet plenty of girls who only think with their lower brains. Mentioning that handsome young men are the main targets when it comes to trafficking, she says he shouldn't forget to warn someone when he gets into trouble. Asking him to hold her helmet, she says she's going to call the police, asking if he remembers the car's license plate, but the boy replies that he doesn't. Then the girl says she's going to deliver some messages and will be right back. Lin, for his part, thinks that Yutang was just immortal, but could also track demonic energy. Then he realizes she has returned. Mentioning that losing weight was causing her problems, she asks him to hand over her helmet, Putting it on her head, she says she didn't want to get into trouble. However, she feels embarrassed, thinking that the boy was more handsome than those motorcyclists on the internet. Lin wonders if that was a protective helmet, and the girl thinks he really was handsome, questioning how she had that ridiculous idea, mentioning that it was her customized helmet, and if she broke it, she would give it as a prize to the mean girls, saying that it only gives her a headache. Looking where the girl was heading, he notices it was exactly where the demonic energy was. As he was worried, he would go see what was happening. Returning to Yutang, the girl seems to pass through a place she shouldn't, where an old woman notices her, questioning who the girl was looking for. Quickly, Yutang pulls out a gun, saying she had a lot of courage not to run when she saw her. Desperately, the woman says she shouldn't place a prank because it was against the law. Then Yutang asks if she knew the demon cultivator's law, but the woman says she was just a chicken farmer. Stealthily, she draws a dagger from her sleeve. Yutang, perceiving the woman's intention, fires her weapon. With her arm bleeding, the woman begs not to be killed. The girl mentions she was a good actress, but would have to be better to deceive her, using a spell that turns her weapon into a sword. Even so, the woman insists she was not a demon cultivator and had nothing to do with that incident. Yutang says she is now only capable of refining chickens, but in the future could be refining people, mentioning she had little cultivation time, but was better than a monk. Then the woman asks how she didn't notice that, saying she would go further if she refined her. Yutang says that was encouraging, quickly advances on the demon, stating that the result wouldn't change, stabbing her sword into the monster's chest. Lin Mo, watching from the background, thinks that energy seemed to be from a demonic sword. Yutang, in turn, seems surprised, for her sword had no effect. The girl thinks that energy was completely different from the demon cultivators she had encountered before, questioning what that creature was. In an instant, the monster advances on Yutang, where she narrowly dodges, assuming that if she took that attack, she would surely die. Again, the creature envelops magic in its fist. Then Yutang takes a piece of paper. There was a spiritual talisman thrown towards the monster. However, it has no effect, where the demon again attacks the girl. Suddenly, she is thrown against the wall, as she coughs blood as she thinks she couldn't believe she had lost. At that moment, the protagonist appears to defend the girl, who asks what he was talking about because he should leave that place. Lin asks to speak politely, but Yutang orders him to leave. Quickly, the young man seems to use his skill, where the demon stops moving. Yutang, surprised, asks why it stopped, but Lin says it was nothing special, for it was he who was there. While fleeing, the demon falls to the ground. Before the monster, a giant aura surrounded the protagonist. The girl mentions that the pressure was very strong and she couldn't breathe, wondering who Lin really was. Meanwhile, in another place in Yuyuan in the city of Liu Bei, a man says that Tao is what gave birth to heaven and earth, encompassing all things. Then the man seems surprised, questioning why the bell was ringing and if it shouldn't only happen when there was a great event in the world. With the master kneeling, his subjects ask if he was okay. Then the man says the father of Tao had just reincarnated. Returning to the protagonist, the boy asks where that demon was. However, the creature had already lost all its spirit, mentioning it was just a fragment of the sword. Even so, it didn't matter. Using a skill, the young man seems to absorb that spirit, thinking it could be a trap by the demon to reveal his location, but was a good item to cultivate when his demonic nature is eliminated. The only thing he had to do now was to take care of that woman. Behind the protagonist, Yutang says he was very handsome. Using magic, the boy orders her to forget what she had seen. Then Yutang faints. Observing the girl, Lin thinks her spiritual root was of the highest quality and that was incredible, even in his world. But that meant there was a good place to cultivate in that world, otherwise it would be impossible to reach that level. Soon after using his skill, the boy feels a pain in his chest, assuming he had overloaded his residual soul, thinking he should leave that place, where he ends up encountering two girls mentioning he was very handsome, and that they would take him to a nice place, but Lin asks to let him go or they would regret it. Then the girl says he was acting tough, asking him to be a little more gentle. Irritated, the protagonist thinks that as his soul was damaged, he couldn't use his strength. Grabbing his face, the woman says he should obey her. Meanwhile, Yutang was behind the two, asking them to get out of her way, throwing a punch at the woman who narrowly dodges. The other woman tries to attack Yutang, but the girl dodges and counterattacks, quickly delivers a kick to the other, where she ends up knocking them both out. Approaching Lin, she asks why he didn't defend himself because when encountering people like that, he should strike with all of his strength at their weak point. The boy, questioning what the vital point was, hears Yutang respond that it was the chest and asks if he didn't even know how to defend himself. Leaving, the girl says she would take the young man to her house. When he was about to take off his helmet, Yutang asks why he did that, telling him to just get on the bike. Getting on the bike, the two head towards Lin's house. The protagonist thinks that in his past life, holding a girl without being in a relationship would be considered indecent, but in that world, they didn't think much about it. However, that vehicle was very fast, mentioning that with his sword, he could go faster than that. In the dead of night, the two arrive at their destination. Lin, thanking for the ride, asks how much he should pay, and the girl questions what he was talking about. Calling him fat, she mentions that just a moment ago the boy was scared and the protagonist asks her not to call him that. Then Yutang says that before Lin didn't care when people called him that. In the middle of the conversation, the girl remembers something, saying that the protagonist had deceived her again and left her waiting. But the boy says his family taught him he should go home after school because he couldn't walk alone, saying he had waited for her before. However, Yutang mentions that she had an emergency. Then her phone starts ringing. Answering the phone, Yutang asks if everything was already done, affirming that the target had a very powerful evil Kai. Mounting her bike, she says she had something to do. While heading to her destination, the girl stops at a corner, thinking that the protagonist's shampoo scent was bothering her. Returning to Lin, the boy thinks he needed to recover. Then Zixuan calls him, questioning if he was causing trouble with Yutang again. Yanhui, in turn, says the boy didn't know how to control his words and was trying to say that Yutang was a bit stressed. Lin, ignoring the two, continues heading towards his house. Inside his quarters, the boy sits next to his door, assuming that if he continued using his power, he could end up damaging his foundation. At least he got a sword fragment that he could use to cultivate. Soon after, someone knocks on the door. Yanhui appears, saying she wanted to talk to the protagonist. Noticing she wasn't with Zixuan, he thinks the girl wanted to be alone. Then Yanhui says it wasn't just about appearance, but the more time she spends with her cousin, the more she realizes she liked the protagonist. That's why she wanted to apologize for everything she had done, asking if his grandmother wouldn't want them to get married. Before she could continue talking, Lin closes the door. The girl, begging, asks him to believe her, saying they would get married. However, as Lin was an emperor, he didn't want to lower himself to that level, thinking that he thought he had already reached the maximum level of spiritual formation, but still had a long way to go. Starting to meditate, the boy considers it as mental resilience training. The next day at Lin's school, a girl calls the protagonist to eat. Noticing the boy ignored her, she mentions that he was very handsome but had a heart of ice, and he was getting more and more handsome, looking like a movie star. Meanwhile, Yanhui, along with her group, were eating. Looking to the side, she notices a girl trying to call the protagonist to her table, who, without any remorse, ends up refusing. Zixuan asks what good it was to be handsome but be alone, and the other guy says he had questioned how he had lost weight, but he always ignored him. Observing the situation, Yanhui seems uneasy. Getting up from the table, she says she would call the boy to her table since they were in the same class. Zixuan, irritated, asks why she would call him as the girl already knew he hated him. Reluctant, Yanhui asked the boy to let her go, otherwise Lin could see and interpret something else. Irritated, Zixuan says he had no more respect for him, and if she went to get the protagonist, she didn't need to come back. However, the girl thinks that if she could have Lin Mo in her arms, she wouldn't regret anything in her life. Meanwhile, a group of girls was bothering the boy, who wonders why all those women were disturbing him. Then Yutang calls the protagonist, ordering him to immediately go to her table. The boys, observing the commotion, suppose that Yutang supposedly liked Lin. Yanhui, desperate, thinks that girl was the worst who could take Lin's attention. The boy, in turn, can't believe that woman was still calling him fat. Looking to the side, he finds that girl from before. Quickly, he starts walking, remembering that there was a possibility of her stealing his place on the terrace. As the young man walked, Yutang noticed the boy in a hurry. The girl next to her said that Lin had become very arrogant after becoming a bit more handsome, asking who he thought he was. Furious, Yutang sent a message to the boy, saying she would kill him after class. Back to Lin, the boy was approaching the terrace. However, that woman was already in his resting place, saying that since she arrived first, Lin should leave. Refusing to leave, the young man mentioned that he had won the race before, so that place belonged to him. The girl said she had let him win because he was a man, asking if he thought she would lose. Then the boy suggested they go downstairs to bet on another race to settle it once and for all. Irritated, the Empress said that the boy only knew how to run and asked if he had any other skill besides that because if he continued that way, he would never get married. Lin Mo, in turn, said it was nothing special, saying he could choose any game and he would beat her in any of them. With a sly smile, the girl seemed to be planning something. Grabbing a cup of pieces, she said they would play that game. Observing that in the girl's hand, Lin wondered if it could be what he was thinking. Then the Empress asked if he knew how to play that game and said that if he won, besides leaving the terrace, he could ask for anything. Sitting on the floor, the boy mentioned that he wouldn't be able to fulfill any of her wishes even if he tried. Convinced, the girl thought she had spent thousands of years playing that game, and her skills were of another level. Little did she know that the protagonist had also spent many years playing that game, known as one of the best in his world. About to start the game, the two stare at each other. In the middle of the match, both sides were completely focused. Realizing he still hadn't won, Lin wondered if that woman was a reincarnation of a player of that game. Sometime later, the match continued until sunset. The girl, observing the situation, realized the match was uncertain, and if she wasn't careful, she could lose. The boy said that if she didn't know what to do, she should give up. However, the Empress mentioned that classes were over, so he should feel proud to have reached that point and therefore should go home. Right after, Lin's phone started ringing. Thinking he could never give up and would only leave that place with a victory. The girl, in turn, couldn't stand the noise of that phone anymore. Taking a picture of the board, she mentioned they could continue the match the next day. However, when she was about to get up, she felt a shock in her leg from sitting for so long, where she unintentionally fell on top of the protagonist. Lin, in turn, felt a very cozy sensation. A moment later, the girl was completely embarrassed, saying she couldn't believe it. Then Lin slapped his forehead, saying that next time she should keep her magical spheres away from him or he would call her a pervert. The girl thought it was already the second time he had hit her, and when her strength returned, she would make him regret it. But during the night, she would study tactics to win her match. Outside the school, Lin Mo picked up his phone to answer the call, realizing it was Yu Tang calling him. Furious, the girl questioned why he didn't answer and where he was, ordering the boy to go to the school gate. The young man thought that Yu Tang spent most of her time in school playing games and even so had a high level of cultivation, so he would find out today what her secret was. Near the gate, Yu Tang asked why he took so long, questioning the reason for staying at school after skipping all classes. However, he said he was just sleeping, leaving the girl surprised, saying she had come to pick him up for a rematch in that game. Handing him a helmet, she told him to get on the bike. A while later, the two arrived at Yu Tang's house, and the protagonist was surprised that the place was so big. As they walked through the house, Yu Tang asked him not to touch anything. Looking around, Lin Mo thought that the only thing in that place was games and there was nothing about cultivation. The girl, in turn, questioned if the boy wasn't worried about being in that place, because a woman had invited him to her house and the boy didn't ask anything. Then the protagonist asked if she intended to do something to him. Mocking the boy, she mentioned it was a good idea because now he wasn't fat anymore, and it wouldn't be a bad idea. Without any compassion, the boy struck her in the belly, ordering her not to touch him. Seeing the damage he had done, the young man thought he didn't know that martial art was so good because it could knock out a cultivator in seconds. Getting up, Yu Tang says she was just kidding, but the protagonist said he didn't like that. Irritated, the woman announces that they will play more than 300 rounds, thinking she would defeat the boy and make him pay for everything he had done. Sometime later in the game, Lin Mo wins a round against the girl. Then he wins 2 more times. That cycle continued countless times without a single victory for the girl. With her head down, Yu Tang realizes she is losing 47-0. Standing up, the boy mentions he needs to go. Stealthily, he seems to place something under her table. Asking for one more game, Yu Tang says he could stay at her house, but the young man says they will continue another day. Saying she would take him to his house, Lin Mo responds that he will take a taxi. The thing the protagonist had placed under the table starts to fall. Seeming to come to life, it begins to move. Meanwhile, in some building, Yanhui in her room was thoughtful about Lin skipping afternoon classes, wondering where the boy had gone. Then she receives a call. Someone asks her to check the group messages because something unbelievable had happened. Looking at the messages on her phone, she sees a photo of the protagonist with Yu Tang. Irritated, the girl starts knocking everything off her desk, questioning how she dared take her Lin Mo to her house, wishing that woman would have a motorcycle accident. However, cursing her wouldn't help anything. Then a purple crystal asks if she wanted revenge. Looking around the room, she asks who is there, asking them to show themselves. However, the crystal says its identity is irrelevant. Then a malicious face appears, saying it could do whatever she wanted. Yanhui, in turn, asks if that monster was a witch from those novels. Embarrassed, that creature thinks the woman had nothing in place of her brain, saying it was the #1 divine sword of the immortal world that ended up shattering, and if she helped it recover, it would make her immortal. Without even thinking, Yanhui accepts the proposal, asking for help to become immortal. At that moment, that creature seems to cast a spell on the girl. A purple crystal appears on Yanhui's forehead, and the monster orders her to open her mind, letting it merge into her body. Asking why she didn't feel any power, the spirit questions what she desired. Suddenly, the girl asks to be taught hypnosis, and the monster mentions there were countless skills like that. In her thoughts, Yanhui supposes that with that skill, Lin Mo would be entirely hers. Meanwhile, the protagonist is riding in a taxi, thinking he couldn't use his powers recklessly and that Yu Tang should reveal her secrets. Quickly, the boy seems to make a hand signal. At Yu Tang's house, that doll received a signal. Observing the girl, he notices she is playing. Questioning if Yu Tang was a fake cultivator, wondering how she reached that level. Furious, Yu Tang can't believe she lost to a stinky fat boy. Lin Mo, in turn, gets irritated with the girl's words, mentioning that now he will crush her in all games. Then Yu Tang remembers she has something to do. Watching her leave the room, Lima wonders where the girl was going. In the room, Yu Tang is changing clothes. Putting on a suit, she says that it will work. Opening a closet, there are numerous combat weapons. The protagonist thinks that even if all that was of low quality, they were still hard to get in this world. Starting to run, the doll jumps onto the girl's clothes, thinking that this time he would discover her secrets. Sometime later, Yu Tang arrives at a building, thinking she should find out what shampoo the protagonist used because it was very fragrant. Inside that building, the girl approaches a door. Meanwhile, someone says they should raise their glasses to celebrate the newlyweds. In that place, a wedding was taking place, and the woman mentions that the bride will give a speech. Taking the microphone, the woman thanks all the people who came despite their busy schedules. Meanwhile, Yu Tang sits in her place, thinking that now she just had to wait for everything to end. After a while, the other woman declares that the wedding ceremony between Lin Yu and Xiuxiu is over, and now the party could begin. Returning to the two newlyweds, his wife asks if he was very tired, but the man asks her not to worry because he just needed to change clothes and drink something. While they were talking, someone approaches the two lovebirds. It was Yutang standing in front of them. Seeing who it was, the boy becomes desperate. The bride, in turn, asks if something was wrong. Then Yutang says that now that her wish had been fulfilled, it was time to go. Starting to transform, the man asks if she thought fulfilling her wishes was that easy. At that moment, that boy transforms into a werewolf. When he was about to attack, Yutang used a talisman. Dodging the attack with a jump, she drew her sword, attacking the wolf from above. With one strike, he was knocked to the ground. Holding his neck, she thanked the girl, and in a matter of seconds, his head disconnected from his body. Desperate, his bride tried to save the man. In his thoughts, he apologized to the woman because he would never see her again, mentioning that this form was a stupid way to die. Returning to human form, his wife ran into his arms, begging him not to die, ordering them to call an ambulance to save him. Furious, the woman said she would kill the girl. Yudang, in turn, mentioned that she didn't know her husband as he was an expert in draining energy from women, turning them into slaves, saying she was just doing her job and it was nothing personal, using a talisman to make them forget everything they had witnessed. Right after, the bride fainted. Calling someone, Yutang said she had finished her job and now they should take care of the rest. Meanwhile, that doll fell from the girl. Running towards the man, Lin Mo realized it was a shape-shifting fox that would be very useful. Lin Mo decides to save the fox, feeling it would be useful, and thus begins to perform the soul reincarnation spell. The golden aura of his paper doll begins to rise towards the fox. The body of the former fox man starts having its soul extracted. The soul moves towards the doll, which has its hands crossed and ends up entering it. Thus, the object completely changes its form to one with long silver hair. The small one starts running desperately, and 20 minutes later, he reaches the hand of someone who was waiting for him. That person is our protagonist, who is outside the building. The soul of the man thinks he is going to die, so by luck, he managed to get revenge, but regrets not being with his beloved. Soon, someone calls him by his name, Chen Xiu, and asks if the fox truly wants to die or if he prefers to live. Opening his eyes in that abyssal darkness, the man admits he doesn't want this to be the end of his life. He still has much to say to Zhou Linyu, and no matter the cost, he still desires to live. Our protagonist informs him that he will give him a new life, and in exchange, he must serve him for 10 years. Thus, the small one opens his purple eyes, revealing an adorable appearance now of a young foxman with long gray hair. He looks around at the ritual he is in, seeing our protagonist, who remains silent. Xiu has never heard of such powerful magic and wonders if it was this young man who summoned him. Soon, he looks up, recognizing that this is the most powerful man he has ever known in his entire life. The small one ends up falling to his knees inside the ritual. He introduces himself as Chen Xiu and says he is there to serve his master, expressing great gratitude for this opportunity to be under his orders. Lin Mo desires that he tell him everything he knows about cultivation in this world. The fox promptly agrees and asks where he should start, to which our young protagonist replies that he wants to know about the cultivation method. The small apprentice explains that due to the scarcity of energy in this realm, cultivators travel to other secret realms. They are completely limited because all are controlled by powerful clans and families. He then reaffirms that even an ordinary practitioner would not be able to join a sect without connections or background. Everyone is taken in by the clans, but only to be used as furnaces and eventually destroyed for cultivation. Our protagonist realizes that this has become an evil cultivation practice, which the small one confirms, stating that this logically happened due to the lack of energy. And logically, the cultivator community has always hunted down the users of these evil sources. Our protagonist asks if they resemble the cultivator Zhao Yutang. With a brief smile, the fox confirms and then says that this girl is not only the most talented, but also from the Zhao family, one of the 3 great families. The other one questions whether there is an immortal realm, to which the small one says he does not know. Quickly, the young man shouts and asks to visit his beloved during these 10 years of service, to which the protagonist agrees but instructs him never to reveal himself. Completely proud, he never imagined he would find such a generous master and accepts that it is very easy to please the immortals. But the next day, he ends up being impressed while inside a backpack. He realizes that his master is actually someone completely unexpected. Being an ordinary high school student, but he then thinks that he must be some sort of boss of that place. The fox thinks that our protagonist is incredibly popular and that all the women are staring at him. Assuming that our hero is the ultimate person, he thinks that if he were a woman, he would also be hitting on our protagonist. But completely clueless, he wonders what the young man has in mind since he can't go a minute without thinking about illicit things. Soon, our protagonist arrives at his seat, but he notices something strange. Some snacks are there underneath. Lin Mo wonders if it's from that annoying friend of his named Song Yunshu. His ex Yan Hui approaches, saying she remembered his favorite snacks and bought them for him, and Lin Mo can't believe it was her. The cousin of our boy approaches, asking what she is doing, and becomes extremely angry. She claims that our hero is her fiancé and that it's normal to pamper him a little, which makes the man completely furious. With tears in his eyes, he prepares to slap the girl while calling her a bitch. Yan Hui grabs his hand with extreme force while telling the boy to stop. Our protagonist is impressed that his cousin couldn't even manage to slap a woman. The girl says she will only say this once and ends up stating that she will punish him if he continues bothering our boy. This leaves the purple-haired boy completely helpless and crying. He runs away from there, leaving the girl alone. She says that if anyone bothers him, he can call her and she'll come back to solve everything for him. The girls think it's ironic that she now shows interest in the protagonist since he's become bolder as he's gotten more attractive. Soon, noon arrives and we can see the school cafeteria. A blue-haired girl calls for the blonde, saying that a girl named Yan-Hui is stealing her man. But the president says they are a bunch of idiots and assumes the girl can have the fat guy since she's not interested in him. Soon, a certain presence catches her attention. It's the protagonist's ex, who shows up with a smug and malicious expression. She ends up calling out Lin Mo's name, who's our protagonist, thus inviting him to eat with her. The blue-haired girl thinks she's trying to provoke and therefore tells Yu-Tang not to take it seriously. But with extreme brutality, the blonde says that if the protagonist annoys her, then she will give him a beating. Soon, anger appears on our hero's face. Thus, he leaves the area with his ex, who is convinced she can win him over. He can't believe he lost his temper after so many years of cultivation and thinks he still has much to learn. In his pocket, the small fox thinks his master is truly incredible since even someone like Zhao Yutang is jealous because of him. Furious, the girl asks if the boy really complained about her, but the blue-haired one just says to ignore it since she can't hit a boy. She decides to forget about the fat guy and then starts thinking about the girl since she's being very bold. Our protagonist finally reaches the school's ground floor. The dark-haired girl, while eating a pastry, tells him to hurry up. Our protagonist notices the immense hostility and reflects that she must be angry about the previous day. He sits down and then makes his first move in the game. She knew that our protagonist would make things difficult for her, but still she had already thought of a solution before any of this happened. Impressed, he admits that the girl is really good at this game. But suddenly, his stomach lets out a hungry growl. With the bag in hand, he stares at her with a somewhat blank look. Then, he opens it, revealing a lunchbox inside. He ends up breaking his chopsticks to start eating. The other one assumes that this is a matter of respect as he is eating instead of playing, but our protagonist excuses himself, saying it's lunchtime. She thinks that if he keeps this up, soon enough he'll be fat again. But soon a question arises about the fat guy who was here on the terrace. Our protagonist says he has never seen anyone of that profile around. Angry, she admits that just thinking about that boy makes her ribs ache because of his weight. But her expression quickly changes to surprise when she sees something on her phone. It's a picture of our protagonist being posted in the girls' group, thus realizing that our protagonist was, in fact, the fat guy she had known before. With red eyes, she says she asked a question, recalling and showing the protagonist's picture, questioning if he truly doesn't know this person from the phone. With extreme shamelessness, the protagonist says he has never seen someone so fat, to which the girl gets irritated, saying Lin Mo is a terrible liar. But she understands that he doesn't want to talk about the past, so she says he doesn't need to worry since she didn't ask for that reason. Soon, she starts rummaging through her bag, revealing that she washed his blazer, though thinking it might not fit him anymore given his current physique. A light appears in his eyes, perplexed by this gesture. Soon, he collects the garment while remaining completely stunned. Quickly, the young woman stands up, accepting it as a tie and saying that he is really good at the game. Our protagonist states that few people are his equal, but she was one of the few who managed to surprise him. The girl states that from now on, their fight is over, but ending it this way leaves the protagonist in silence. Quickly and with conviction, he ends up calling her, saying it would be better to have a best of 3 and decide a winner. With a cheerful smile, she accepts his proposal and then reveals her name as Han Xinyi. Our protagonist is surprised by this name at first, but then reflects a little. His small fox ends up jumping out of his bag in surprise. It's astonished that he is so powerful that all the women throw themselves at his feet. But our protagonist reveals he has a question, which is about where the resources for his demonic cultivation come from. The little one promptly replies that they come from the Dark Gate network. The items are protected by the Shadow Clan, which is primarily responsible for the protection of both demonic cultivators and members of other families. But they can also sell them to people of good nature, as long as you have money. Our protagonist is surprised and then asks how he managed to get money. The small fox responds that he completed several assassination missions but ends up saying that the quickest way to get money is by finding a sugar mommy. He assumes that his master doesn't even need to work since a sugar mommy would be the best option for him. But quickly, the protagonist's hand flies towards him, grabbing him while the fox squirms, saying he shouldn't have said such things. Lin Mo then puts him back in his pocket, informing him that when they get home, he will take a look at the materials, especially how to make spiritual amulets. The night begins to fall over the school, which is now silent. At the time of dismissal, the blonde ends up calling him by the fat guy she knows. But our hero simply dodges, causing Zhao Yutang to get irritated and tell him not to pretend he didn't see her. She ends up saying that today his ex-girlfriend provoked her and tried to embarrass her, but our protagonist reveals that Yan-Hui is not his ex-girlfriend. The girl doesn't care but informs him that she's a respectable person and therefore he should cooperate and suggests that he could go for a motorcycle ride with her. In silence, the protagonist simply keeps his face expressionless while reflecting. The girl with a mischievous smile asks if Lin Mo will be able to get on by himself or if he'll need her to carry him. When he agrees, they both go to the motorcycle and she calls him a good boy. Behind a lamppost, someone watches the blonde and curses her for going out with her precious Lin Mo. A shadowy voice ends up asking why she doesn't hypnotize him. But the younger one reveals that she wants the protagonist to willingly give himself to her body and soul. Soon both leave the school in a desperate rush. The protagonist notices this and says that Yutang is going too far. With a mischievous smile, she says he's too naive for believing the words of a woman. In a broadly suggestive manner, the protagonist asks if she's really interested in him, leaving her blushing and confused. The motorcycle comes to a sudden skid stop. With a red face, she asks if she hasn't made it clear enough that she isn't interested in him, to which the protagonist asks if she really doesn't want him. The girl tries to refuse with all her might, and the protagonist just accepts, saying that they're just colleagues, so she shouldn't get too involved with him. Yutang ends up revealing that there's a line of people wanting to be her boyfriend, and even so, if it weren't for the games, she would have never looked at the protagonist. In our young protagonist's pocket, the small fox thinks his master is truly surprising. He wonders when he placed that paper doll on her, and moreover, how he did it with a normal of 4 sheet. Sometime later, we can see our dear protagonist's house. He thinks about the Dark Gate network. Soon after, he calls for his small companion, who jumps onto the table. With quick clicks on the keyboard, he confidently says he will access the dark network as quickly as possible. Thus, he keeps hitting enter forcefully and manages to gain access. But the small fox ends up on a website with highly suggestive content. It's a site for renting some night ladies, or even books with explicit and adult content. Lin Mo then wonders if this is the right site, to which the small fox responds that it is the right site and that he just needs to navigate to the treasure page. He thinks he has found the real world of cultivation, but even a low-level spiritual weapon from the immortal realm is a superior treasure in this world. The most important things he will need are 1,000-year-old ginseng immortal stones, but they end up costing over $100,000. His small companion still tries to convince him to sell his photos to rich, older women. Below the stressed face, the protagonist asks if he looks poor or something, to which his small apprentice understands. Our protagonist then asks for the money the small fox has, but the little one ends up saying he only has 30,000 in his account. Grabbing the mouse along with his computer, he says that this will be enough. The white-haired young man decides to question if his master really intends to make talismans. Soon, Chen Xiu tries to suggest that the boy seeks something else since talismans may have a good price, but they are difficult to make and the materials they have are of low quality. Our protagonist informs him that he will only make low-level talismans to sell them, so he tells him not to worry about anything. Shortly after, he moves away, instructing him to return to training, and his small apprentice thinks that with these materials, they will only be able to create junk and useless things. The next day, we see Lin Mo now wearing an outfit that hides his identity along with a mask and glasses. A man in a van asks if the delivery is for him, to which he responds as the white fox. Thus, the large box is handed to him, and the delivery person asks for a 5-star rating for his excellent service. The young man assumes that this is truly a fast delivery service, so he considers leaving a rating. In his pocket, his apprentice informs him that the Shadow Clan has a business network that rivals even the big families. Soon after, we see a few minutes later where the protagonist stares at 2 papers on his desk. The small white fox wonders if he really intends to make these talismans. He has heard that the talisman masters of the great family spend years training before they even start, and even then, only 30% of them succeed. Our young protagonist sighs while closing his eyes. Shortly after, he begins drawing the symbols on the paper with extreme agility. Quickly, he announces he has finished the dragon talisman, which surprises the small fox. He thinks it's impossible for him to have drawn the symbols in an instant and especially to have made 2 at the same time, and he swears he saw a dragon appear out of nowhere. Our protagonist tells him to stop making noise as these are low-quality talismans. Moreover, it's a pity that he only has enough spiritual power to make 2 and admits he needs to buy more spiritual stones. Soon after, Lin Mo goes to put these items up for sale and lists them for $500,000. But he is quickly surprised after posting, because the bids start rising anonymously but quickly. His companion informs him that talismans sell very well and that great cultivators and even ordinary people use them, which is why they are considered high quality. Soon, our protagonist realizes that something might have happened with his paper doll. Observing closely through the doll's vision, he notices that the blonde is also on the dark network, looking at something strange. With eyes full of dark circles, she remarks that investigating a kid who went missing is really exhausting. Until suddenly, she sees the listing for the high-quality talisman, along with the invisibility effect, which seems quite convincing. She assumes it's a good time since she doesn't know this demon, and it's better to be prepared to watch him if necessary. Our protagonist thinks that a spiritual stone might be useful, and moreover, a missing demon is truly strange, and he wonders if it could be the venerable demon. We then see the next day at school, precisely during lunchtime. Our dear Lin Mo climbs the stairs until he is interrupted by 3 boys. They end up insulting him and asking how he dares to disguise himself to get the girl's attention, but that on the inside, he's still the same trash. Our protagonist keeps his expression dark and neutral while looking slightly down. His ex-girlfriend says she's enjoying this hypnosis more since it's giving her an unbelievable opportunity. But with an arrogant and especially threatening look, the protagonist warns them to get out of his way, which irritates the people in front of him. The boys, unconvinced, ask if Linmo has lost his will to live and then decide that they will kill him at that very moment. But before he could hurl more insults at the protagonist, he was caught by his massive hand. Our young protagonist pushes him against the wall in a single brutal move. The impact was so powerful that it knocked him out, and with an irritated look, our protagonist glances to the side. He sees the two other goons looking horrified, questioning if he really desires death. His ex thinks this is the moment to intervene and have the protagonist in her arms. But quickly, a black-haired girl steps in front of her. She shouts for them to stop tormenting him. It's the board game partner the protagonist met, and she immediately questions what's going on there. The beaten and crying boy lied, saying they just wanted to be friends, but Linmo pushed him and punched his nose. The young woman questions if that's really true, since there's no way of knowing if the boy is lying. Soon after, the protagonist's ex insults the girl, saying she ruined her moment. She then pretends to have just arrived and asks if her protagonist is okay, claiming she heard there was a commotion and rushed over. She asks if it was the girl who did it, and then thanks her. She adds that one day she'll treat her to lunch to properly show her gratitude. She then grabs the protagonist's hand and asks him to leave with her. But promptly, the black-haired girl holds her hand. With a confident tone, she says that this is truly detestable, as a woman should not take advantage of a defenseless man. With a malicious and angry expression, the ex-girlfriend tells her to stay away and not meddle in her affairs, as it's the best she can do. The protagonist tells her to let it go since they can leave now. Hee realizes she's losing control of the protagonist, so she tries to use her hypnosis. But the hypnosis is promptly nullified and doesn't work on our hero. The demon accompanying her informs her not to use magic for the rest of the day, as he has a bad feeling. The black-haired girl states that she heard the younger girl had dumped the protagonist. She then walks past her, making her angry by saying she pities her. But the brown-haired girl stays rooted to the spot. Trembling with anger, she can only think of how unpleasant this girl is and calls the protagonist a shameless dog for not obeying her orders. Later, after classes, we see the protagonist arrive at his home. He is in front of the computer with his small companion. Ken Xiuxiu then mentions that someone offered 2 spiritual stones and a lot of money, understanding that this person really knows how to do business. Our protagonist realizes the offer is from the blonde girl and wonders if she is a member of the Phoenix Group, adding that it could be a trap. Linmo comments that his companion had told him that the Phoenix Group was responsible for eliminating demonic cultivators, so there's no reason for them to be involved. But the small fox reveals that a trap isn't necessary, as the Dark Gate network already cleanses demonic cultivators daily with the help of the Phoenix Group. Then a small notification pops up on his computer. He notices that the chosen meeting point is Fangtong Station, a seemingly ordinary place. Even so, just to be safe, he goes disguised as usual. His small fox is perplexed, knowing that none of this is necessary, as the site and the delivery are completely secure. The next day after classes, the protagonist successfully completes the delivery. He calculates that after the 200,000 commission in cash, he has 700,000 left in the spiritual stones. But still, he hadn't expected the quality of items in this world to be so poor. Our young protagonist then absorbs the raw materials all at once. With a smile, he realizes that at least he can still recover some of his spiritual power. He then takes 2 more talismans that he crafted, thus unleashing a massive dragon from the 2 papers. The protagonist instructs his small companion to sell the 2 on the Dark Gate network, to which the fox confirms. He can see the comments from people genuinely praising whoever the master was who created these 2 types of talismans. Linmo thinks that this world is truly backward in terms of cultivation, and it's strange that they get excited over a simple first-level talisman. Quickly, his small companion becomes excited and perplexed, because someone offered 3 million all at once for the protagonist's talisman. But soon, the price shot up to 4 million in one go. Someone in a fully technological room asks if they've gone mad. They then question how a first-level talisman can cost more than 3 million. Quickly, someone on the microphone states that the invisibility talisman that was sold earlier wasn't ordinary, and that's why they want to find out about the manufacturer. In the blonde girl's house, she looks at her state-of-the-art computer. Quickly, she starts getting even more irritated as she sees something in front of her. Yutang then clicks her mouse once, thus adding another million to the talisman auction. Our protagonist simply watches the prices rise with his arms crossed. He had to cover his small companion's mouth so he wouldn't cause any disturbance. Quickly, the bid reached a peak of 15 million in cash. The comments are from people wanting to make an offer to the protagonist and especially asking if they can meet. Our young hero realizes that this is all dangerous, so he decides to disappear for a while, since all the cultivators in this world will probably come after him. But at least he'll get something good out of it, and decides to check on the progress of the blonde girl who was betting in the auction. Sometime later, we see the girl's house. Our protagonist notices that she's still investigating the disappearance of the boys, all of them being virgins, and it seems to have something to do with the Demon King. Looking at the screen, he notices that Yutang is conducting real-time surveillance. But at the same time, our boy feels a bit uncomfortable with it, as he didn't know she was into this kind of thing. She becomes tense upon seeing such ugliness on her computer screen and ends up slamming the table, saying that the boy is horrible and that not even his hairstyle can save him. The horrendous person then decides to search the internet for something, looking for tips to look better in photos. It could be anything that would make him look beautiful, so he still searches for eccentric filters. Other things cross his mind too, such as plastic surgery and facial harmonization. But there's something more. Things like having a flat stomach, long legs, and even removing love handles. Our dear Yutang feels she can't continue living after seeing such an atrocity on her screen. She admits that not even the fat guy is as unbearable as this disgusting person. Sometime later, we see the school during lunchtime. Our protagonist notices that the blonde girl said something irrelevant to him, until suddenly his attention is drawn by someone in front of him. It's the black-haired girl who asks if he wants to play. And if Linmo doesn't want to, that's okay, as she doesn't want an easy win. Silence fills the air as the protagonist looks at the board game. Soon he admits that he isn't feeling well and decides to leave. He acknowledges that he doesn't want to admit defeat, but the young man also doesn't want to take advantage of the situation in any way. Our protagonist then goes to the edge of the terrace. Climbing up to get some air, he thinks that if he wants to obtain the power of Yang, he'll need to create a formation, and the most powerful ones are the demonic ones. If only Linmo had some tea, and perhaps it would be possible to do what he desires. The girl warns him not to accidentally fall, to which he just smiles. Our protagonist then walks toward her, humming softly. But Yanhui, who had been watching everything secretly, becomes even more irritated. Soon, our hero is stopped as he's leaving the terrace. It's the brown-haired girl who is extremely angry at him. Our young protagonist promptly asks what's wrong with her, to which she tries to speak with a dark expression on her face. But Han Xinyi, who is with the protagonist, tells her to stop bothering him. Then the younger brown-haired girl tells Han Xinyi not to dare touch her man, as he belongs to her down to his nails and teeth. Higanhui turns and tells the girl to just wait, and she'll see her painful death. Linmo watches her leave, wondering to himself when he became hers. Sometime later, as night falls, we see the protagonist's ex-girlfriend's house. As she takes a stressed-out shower, Yanhui thinks and admits that she underestimated our hero. She thinks she should have pursued him from the very beginning, but she assumes that this time he will belong to her completely, without any hesitation. With a psychotic expression, the girl decides she will hypnotize him tonight to make the boy her obedient pet from now on. Her aura spreads through the air until it reaches the protagonist's house. The purple energy approaches him while he is having his morning beauty sleep, but a barrier formed from his energy manages to hold back all this negative impact. His small companion wakes up and notices something happened, wondering what could have caused such torment while he slept. Quickly, Linmo realizes it's a remote hypnosis technique and admits he never thought anyone in this world would use something like that to hypnotize this emperor. The next day, we see our protagonist's school. The brown-haired girl stands in front of him, blocking and preventing his path. She tells him that tonight he will get ready and come to her house. With eyes full of malice, she can only imagine the taste of his lips and becomes even more anxious for the night to arrive. But then she takes on a psychotic expression, thinking she has successfully hypnotized Linmo and assumes he will be obedient. On the other hand, our protagonist continues walking calmly, smiling as he realizes that it was her who tried to hypnotize him the previous night. It is then revealed that our hero managed to attach a paper doll to the girl's back. His consciousness was already linked to the small doll that smiled at our protagonist. We then see him later in the classroom, until suddenly, something catches his attention. It's the paper doll on his ex's body, which has just vanished. The reason for its disappearance was that the brown-haired girl herself discovered the small observer attached to her. She then incinerates it with her demonic purple flames. Her demon tells her she's pathetic for not noticing she was being watched. With sweat on her face and tense, Yanhui wonders who could be suspicious enough to need to monitor her. Her companion then informs her that whoever it is, it doesn't matter, as she cannot let this person ruin her plan. After school, as the afternoon begins to fall, we see our protagonist walking out thinking that whoever destroyed the paper doll might be connected to the venerable demon. But since there are so many cultivators in this world, he cannot act hastily, and it may be necessary for him to seek out the Phoenix group. If his calculations are correct, the blonde girl should pass by at that exact moment. In this world, the act he's about to commit has a very specific name. It's called fraud. The girl is suddenly startled when she realizes she has run over the protagonist. The blonde quickly stops her motorcycle as our boy crashes to the ground from the previous impact. She asks why he crossed without looking both ways. Holding him in her arms, she asks if he's okay and says she'll take him to the hospital. But with empty eyes, the boy just stands up, leaving her confused. With a mischievous smile, Linmo admits he has learned to be bad in this world he finds himself in. The blonde wonders what's wrong with him and even tries to pull him back. But the protagonist reveals that he is going to his ex-girlfriend's house tonight because she's expecting him for a special night. She is shocked by such a statement, since she knows that's not in his character. Suddenly, surprise shows on her face as she realizes something more. She tries to call the protagonist back, telling him to return to his senses, but he walks past her, leaving her completely stunned. Yutang wonders if the fat guy was really hypnotized. She then makes a gesture with her hands to break the spell. She draws a star in the air using her fingers, resting her hand on the boy's forehead. The shine in his eyes, which had vanished before, starts to reappear little by little, but quickly fades again. She realizes it had no effect and questions whether the person who cast this spell is really that powerful. Soon, the blonde beauty decides to use the Phantom Redemption Seal, applying a heavy, magical palm to the forehead of our protagonist. This brings him back to his previous state of mind, which he had clearly been pretending. With his hand on his face, he asks what's happening and why he's there. The blonde says she was about to ask him that and questions whether, by any chance, Lin Mo had met up with his ex-girlfriend. He admits he did, but asks what it matters, as she's going to see her fiancé. Completely flustered, the girl says that he had appeared in front of her and was hit by her motorcycle, so he should follow her to the hospital. Yutang wonders how our hero can say that after being hit, but she says she doesn't want to, and if she feels guilty, she can pay his medical expenses later. The girl grabs him by the collar, leaving him completely agonized. She then rubs a piece of paper in his face, saying she'll write him a check because she doesn't want to worry about a lawsuit from him in the future. She tells him to spend it on whatever he wants, but warns him not to use it against her in the future or he will regret it. Our dear Lin Mo wonders if writing a few thousand zeros will be enough to exchange for a few hundred spiritual storages. The girl then speeds off on her motorcycle. Yutang tells someone over her helmet communicator that she needs all the information on the protagonist's ex-girlfriend as she's a suspect, which the person confirms. Soon, she arrives at the house of the girl who was once interested in our protagonist. Removing her helmet gracefully, she extends her hand, which bears a special ring. Then she releases her magical sword at once. She proceeds to make dozens of cuts on the doorknob to open the door. The cuts are so precise that the door itself falls, but the doorknob remains attached in the shape of the door. She walks in, seeing some family photos. They don't appear to be of her family, but rather of two boys who seem to be her friends. She then reaches the protagonist's ex-girlfriend's room. Realizing she's completely obsessed with thousands of photos of the protagonist pinned to her wall, she notices several manuals about our protagonist and decides to see what they are. Curiously reading, she flips through the pages slowly. Her face begins to turn red from the indecency of the contents. She assumes that everything there is very perverted and decides to put an end to it, until her communicator informs her of a new problem. It says that Yanhui has disappeared suddenly and suspiciously. The girl realizes that based on the young woman's plans, it's likely she has something to do with the missing persons cases, and she must inform the team to issue a missing person alert. She then thinks that Yanhui is extremely clever for having devised such a precise plan in such a short time. At the protagonist's house, Mike fully envelops the place. He starts to think he's seen enough, and it's easy to imagine that his ex-girlfriend has some connection with the venerable demon, which is why the Phoenix group must prioritize her. Suddenly, a sound catches our protagonist's attention. It's his cousin, who asks if he's seen the news recently. Promptly, our boy opens the door in a somewhat receptive manner. And quickly, the purple-haired boy informs him that Yanhui is being sought, but our protagonist says he knows nothing as he no longer intends to approach her. Lin ends the conversation with the boy when he is met with a strong slam of the door. The young man insists that he at least check the news happening right at this moment. Our protagonist sees that Yanhui from the Fengsheng Institute is suspected of an abuse case against a young man and is being sought nationwide. He thinks the search team is truly efficient, but there is still no information on the girl. The small fox thinks that this woman is really cruel and extremely foolish for daring to mess with his master. Lin Mo knows that if the venerable demon wants to absorb the yang power of a young man, he will end up forming a well-organized formation, primarily of evil origin. Quickly, our young protagonist crouches down and starts rummaging through a box. The small white fox wonders what his master is searching for until he sees a glimmer in his gestures. Becoming even more confused, the small fox realizes that what he grabbed are just some seemingly ordinary wooden boards. Our hero lets out a tired sigh. He then channels all of his energy into the two boards at once. They begin to disassemble and reform into a shape that suits his needs. It becomes a kind of manual compass made entirely of wood. The small fox is astonished that he managed to create such an ancient oriental compass in such a short time. Our boy thinks that, with the venerable demon's ability, it will be impossible for the Phoenix group to find her. That is, unless they use this compass to locate the malignant energy. Our young protagonist begins merging the two boards at once, turning it into a tracking device similar to a radar. A massive explosion occurs, causing a startled cry from the small fox. That light artifact from before now feels heavier with energy after merging with a low-level stone. The fox is stunned by this incredible sight. Quickly, the spoon that serves as a needle to point the direction begins to move. The small servant of our hero realizes that his master is truly powerful, having made a simple board work so effectively as a radar. Our protagonist then asks the small fox to hold it, to which the little spirit complies. He then asks his master what makes this compass so special. Quickly, our protagonist explains that it is used to locate places with the highest concentration of yin energy in the city. Suddenly, something catches the young man's attention, leaving him completely startled. He tells the small fox to hide, which it obeys with extreme precision. The boy calmly and silently watches the window, until the blonde girl appears with a funny expression, leaving him slightly confused. She pulls an excited and strange expression, making him feel completely uncomfortable. With his phone in hand, the young man quickly considers calling the police, to which she responds by telling him to open the window and not to do anything inappropriate. She apologizes for what she did, saying it was necessary. Our protagonist promptly asks what she's doing in a place like that, to which the girl tells him not to say nonsense and asks where he was injured. Our hero thinks that Yutang is suspicious of him, but by sheer luck he hasn't healed yet, so the injuries and scars are still on his body. He shows her his wound on his arm and also reveals another on his leg. Quickly, the girl lifts his pant leg in an indecent manner, revealing the minor wound. Completely flustered and embarrassed, he asks what she's doing, but Yutang insists she's just cleaning the wounds. Otherwise, she will be responsible for the scars that will remain if she doesn't. She thinks that this guy, who used to be chubby, really has the most beautiful legs she has ever seen. His fox shouts in his mind that his master offered his arm and she went straight for his legs, clearly taking advantage of him. Our protagonist pulls his pant leg back down and says he didn't imagine someone like Yutang would come over for such a trivial reason. But the girl reveals she has a question, which is about him being one of the last people to have seen Yanhui, and she asks what she told him. The boy admits he doesn't remember anything that happened after seeing her. The girl then steps back through the window and says that this was all useless, so she's leaving, but the boy wonders why she doesn't exit through the door. Soon after, Lin Mo, being completely cautious, asks her to wait. He finishes by offering to act as bait to help her, if she wants. Quickly, the girl blushes with embarrassment, having seen something seemingly indecent, that being the well-defined chest of our boy, visible due to his shirt. She leaves from the balcony, saying she will accept his offer, but our protagonist notices she agreed a bit too quickly. The next day, the sun rises at the school. Our protagonist arrives in his classroom with extreme flamboyance. The girls approach him completely worried as they heard that Yanhui is an abuser and are concerned about what she might have done to him. Our protagonist, being completely cold, reveals that he is fine and tells the two to move out of his way. Suddenly, another girl arrives, telling everyone to come and see as a very handsome guy has just transferred into their class. All the girls quickly move, heading toward the location to learn more about this new person. The girls near the new green-haired boy ask for his name. He promptly introduces himself as Shen Lishan and says that since they are in the same class, they can call him Lele. Suddenly, a few blonde strands catch his attention. The girls persuade him to go with them to a spot at the main entrance, to which he readily agrees. With ulterior motives, the young man reveals that he transferred to this school to investigate the case of He Yanhui, but even so, he did not expect to encounter such a beauty. But suddenly, he is surprised to see that she has her foot on the door. She then delivers a powerful kick that rips the door from its hinges. Immediately after, she shouts to her companion not to leave the school grounds as he shouldn't go outside before she does. The green-haired boy is completely bewildered by this behavior and begins calculating the odds of her being completely crazy despite her beauty. After school, as the sun begins to set, our protagonist leaves the premises still maintaining his usual extravagance. The blonde was waiting for him outside and orders Lin Mo to follow her. The two begin walking down the school hallway, which is completely silent. We can see that he was taken to the school's infirmary so they could be alone. He states that he's already healed, and if she touches his leg again, they'll have to retaliate and restrain her until the police arrive. But the girl reveals she doesn't care about that and asks our hero to look at a document. She reveals that she has a police relative who found a diary about how to take care of our protagonist in He Yanhui's house, which is clearly a lie. Even though the boy has read it before, he is still surprised to see some rather questionable fetish details in the pages. Blushing, the girl says that her plan seems to have a detail about observing men and taking them to her house, and apparently, Lin Mo was one of those men. But the protagonist says he never imagined she was a pervert and should have figured it out earlier, so he could prepare himself in case something like this happens. The blonde then says they searched the entire country for her, but still haven't found a trace of her, not even in her favorite spots. Our protagonist puts on his glasses and mentions that he remembers He Yanhui always liked spooky places since childhood, so she's probably hiding in one of those places. The reason no one has found her is likely because she used some sort of makeup. He says all this while striking an extremely cool pose, to which the girl replies that our hero doesn't need to act like the school detective. Yutang realizes it all makes sense, as she must have used some kind of disguise to hide. She understands that He Yanhui really enjoys dark places, so she must have taken many young boys there to practice her dark arts on their defenseless bodies. The girl then says that's all she has to discuss for today, and that therefore our hero needs to leave right now. He gives a mischievous smile at all this. Soon we see his house, where he appears completely defenseless. He has given her the clues, and next time Zhao Yutang will go to the Darknet to buy a magic weapon to help find the yin energy. The boy then calls his small apprentice, who quickly appears. Our protagonist instructs him to put the compass he made up for auction on the dark door, which the small fox understands immediately. He begins typing on the keyboard with extreme speed. He decides to set the initial price at 10,000 in cash and publishes it. Then he informs his master that he has already listed it for auction, and it's just a matter of time before they see the results. Ken Xiushu notices that the bidding price is rising abnormally fast, as if it's an item highly coveted by everyone. Quickly, the 10,000 in cash turns into 5 million at a surreal speed. At the same time, we see Zhao Yutang's house, our blonde protagonist. She notices that the price has already reached 5 million in the blink of an eye and continues to rise nonstop. With a cunning smile on her face, she remarks that these people really like to flaunt their money, and then declares that they have no money compared to her. Through his observation doll, our protagonist sees that Zhao Yutang is indeed bidding with intense eagerness. It seems that she is likely to win the item, and as a result, will be able to track down the ex-girlfriend of our dear protagonist. Quickly, the price reaches the astonishing mark of 10 million. The small fox realizes that this is an unbelievable result achieved in mere seconds and wonders how many married women have that much money. We then see, a day later, the blonde meeting with several other women and an elderly woman with a cane. She reveals that the place with the highest concentration of yin is exactly here. The old woman thinks out loud, saying that this is a great treasure pointing hundreds of miles away and reveals the strongest yin energy, so it must be very rare. Our girl notices that this expert has been specially invited by the group to assist in this mission, and that it's not easy to receive praise from this woman. Drawing her cane, the old lady reveals a weapon and then declares that she will explore the path ahead, instructing the others to wait there. As the elderly woman approaches, a massive green, demonic hand suddenly appears in front of her. A gigantic explosion occurs, a result of a special attack the woman used at the right moment before being struck. Our protagonist, seeing everything through his paper doll, can only feel tense about the situation. He recalls that there wasn't a way to break the formation, and that it might be some modern weapon she pulled from her ring. He realizes that this is something unprecedented in this world and concludes that it is incredible, something he never imagined. Suddenly, his wall shatters as an extremely muscular woman bursts in while carrying his cousin. Our young hero is shocked as he notices the woman emanates a strange green and malignant aura. The small fox calls out to his master, saying that this woman also broke the protagonist's cousin. Linmo acknowledges this and asks the small fox not to move as he had already anticipated this, knowing that there are some things one cannot do. It appears that Yanhui hypnotized them to attempt to kidnap him, but since the Phoenix group is still fighting, it's unlikely his ex would exert herself to come personally. As the fist comes towards him, he keeps in mind that there might be more to all of this. It could be a trap set by Yanhui to capture the Phoenix group while kidnapping him. All he has to do is wait for Yanhui to regret it, and fortunately, he was able to use his aura to protect his body and stay conscious. The woman ends up taking both cousins to a white van waiting outside suspiciously. She throws them inside the vehicle with bags over their heads, doing so abruptly and violently. She then drives away, cruising through the streets without the slightest concern. Soon, the woman reaches an abandoned factory, where the protagonist's ex is likely hiding. She removes the bag from our hero's head. Sadistically, she is surprised that it is him, clearly putting on a front. She asks if he is surprised to see her again in this place. With a sly smile, Linmo admits he is indeed surprised, insulting her in the process. She becomes extremely annoyed by the arrogant tone carried in his words. Throwing the boy against the wall, she can only assume he has a big, bold mouth to speak to her like that. Linmo advises her not to get any closer. Unbuttoning her shirt, she says he's still pretending to be arrogant and wonders if it was Zhao Yutang or Han Shinyi who took his virginity. Her demon informs her that the blonde has broken the formation and is quickly heading their way, so it's best for Yanhui to hurry up and get the job done. With a malicious smile and a wicked expression, she agrees, saying it's true since the Emperor is waiting for her next special move. She declares that the protagonist should stay there and wait, as she will return after they have tested the Emperor. Our boy becomes tense at the possibility that the demonic sword or the venerable demon might be communicating internally with the girl. In a dark cell where water drips, we see, sometime later, the protagonist's cousin sleeping peacefully, even in such a situation. Her cousin wakes up in a panic, pleading not to be killed or abused. Looking around, he begs to be spared from this cruel fate and, above all, wonders where he is. Elsewhere, we see the crater created by the old woman who broke the formation. Everyone gathers to see the massive sight. The blonde realizes that Yanhui was indeed clever enough to use this formation to turn the place into a point of extreme yin concentration. Now they must follow the next direction the compass points to, so they can arrive in time, as the people there might already be dead. A green demon appears, laughing, and asks where the women think they're going. Suddenly, a huge explosion occurs, throwing everyone backward. Laughing maliciously, the flame-covered demon declares that everyone there will die without any demands. We then see the forest where the demon was summoned. Antir, calmly grazing in the lush, life-filled area, senses something. This action briefly startles it. A gigantic explosion of green energy shatters the ground. Smoke begins to spread along with that colossal and terrifying aura. The demon, summoning multiple blades, claims that none of them will escape his wrath. His attacks are aimed at the blonde as he shouts for her to go to hell, laughing all the while. As the attacks close in, the old woman shields the girl before she's hit. The elder declares that she will handle the demon while the others escort Miss Zhao away, as her life is too valuable to be lost to this phantom. The hot-headed spirit asks if she really plans to defeat him alone. He reiterates that no one will leave there alive, forming several seals with his many arms. He shouts, threatening that he will bury them all there that day, and forms a formation. The seal crashes down on the spot where everyone is gathered. The old woman quickly recognizes it as the Soul Devourer formation. She shouts for everyone to use their auras to protect their bodies. One of the women doesn't have enough time and begins to feel her body burning, screaming in agony. Her cries echo as her life fades, along with her skin and flesh. The blonde is shocked and horrified by the evil scene that unfolds before her eyes. She pulls out a special bow from her storage ring, along with an arrow made entirely of energy. Drawing the string, she mutters that this is a unique situation and she'll need to use ranged attacks. She announces her intention to aim for the demon's face in order to escape. Her aura arrow magically alters its trajectory. It strikes the demonic face with great precision, accompanied by a large explosion. Even so, the demon declares that it's nothing compared to his immense power. The elder states that her life energy and magic are severely weakened due to the formation, so they won't be able to cause any damage to him. Soon, the spirit begins to inflate his mouth with something. It is a thick, dense smoke. Zhao Yutang realizes that the spirit is resurrecting the corpses. Her former companion begins to move in a zombie-like and eerie manner. But with extreme agility, the zombie lunges at her. With quick thinking, the blonde draws something from her storage ring. It is a sword, which she uses to slice the zombified woman in half. The elder then states that she will control the poisonous gas and that the girl must deal with the blood puppets as soon as possible. She also reveals that there is no salvation for any of her companions. But from the blonde's perspective, she sees the remorse in part of the faces of those she once called friends. Even so, with the swift slash of her sword, she is able to defeat the monster. But with another adversary present, she decides to execute a maneuver in the air to finish it off. Unexpectedly, Yutang hears that dead body calling her name. She hesitates, unsure whether to strike her former friend who seems to have regained consciousness. But it was all in her head, as the monster still attacks, tearing a part of her abdomen with a single blow. The blonde can only cough up blood and regain her senses due to the damage. She grabs her weapon with more determination and ferocity. She then performs an X-shaped slash to end the fight. Even so, her wound is very severe. With blood dripping from her mouth and abdomen, she can only collapse to the ground. Her weapon dissolves into the wind along with the rain as she chokes on her own blood. She admits it was unexpected and wonders if these really were blood puppets. Yutang, in her thoughts, questions whether the old woman survived alongside her and thinks that if she had known the danger, she wouldn't have brought so many people. The two hypnotized people who arrived at the scene watch her as one of them pulls out a knife. The elder tries to shout the blonde's name. A spirit attacks her, asking how she dares to be distracted. Behind the barrier, the demon says he is eager to see how long the old woman's turtle shell will last. The blonde, lying on the ground, blames herself, realizing the elder was also dragged into this because of her. The knife flies towards her, ready to end her life. We can only hear her cursing herself as blood splatters into the air. But unexpectedly, the knife doesn't hit her. It strikes the ground beside her. The head of the attacker was severed in an instant. A girl announces that she felt the blonde's vitality fading too quickly and ran over. This is Zhao Hongling, leader of the Phoenix group, who states that it's too early for Yutang to die. Yutang recognizes her as the man beside her stares at the seemingly younger girl. But we are surprised as the man's head flies and the blonde addresses her as grandma. The elder is shocked by what just happened. For the famous Miss Hongling is present. The demon laughs as he realizes that the young girl is merely the backup that came to assist the women. Feeling insulted, the spirit declares that she is just a mortal and won't be able to fight against this sword fragment. He claims that even if the emperor himself were there, he would stand no chance. Quickly, the mouth of the insolent spirit is shut by the attack of the childlike elder. She undoes the formation made by the ghostly face. The blonde realizes that a single strike was enough and acknowledges that her grandmother is truly incredible. The younger-looking elder then tells her granddaughter that if she had attacked from the start, she wouldn't have been injured like this. She extends a medicine, instructing her to drink it quickly. The girl complies and then asks her grandmother if she can locate her missing companion. The elder states that their target is the protagonist and that he must be saved. She reassures her granddaughter, saying that she knows everything, that she doesn't need to worry. She should focus on resting. The girl feels confused about resting until her vision begins to blur. As she falls asleep, the younger elder calls the older one, who promptly responds. The elder questions where the companion her granddaughter mentioned is. The old woman responds that based on her and Yutang's guesses, he should be in an area with an abundance of extreme yin energy. The younger-looking elder, with her sword in hand, states that there's no need for further explanations. She then asserts that she can still find the place with the greatest concentration of yin. Amusingly, the sword begins to float as she tries to ascend, but she soon falls in a presumptuous and even ridiculous manner. She orders everyone to move quickly, as they need to take the blonde back to HQ to treat her wounds, while the elder will head to the supposed location with the highest yin concentration. She then darts toward the location, saying she'll see them later. We then see the abandoned factory where our protagonist is held. His ex-girlfriend, now possessed by the demon, begins performing a ritual. The fox, alongside the protagonist, asks what she is doing. Our protagonist explains that she is absorbing the yang energy from these men to increase her power, and the price is that she will age. Suddenly, something grabs her attention, a massive surge of energy. She questions who is disturbing her at this moment. Then we see the blonde's grandmother outside. Yanhui opens the door with a scowling, anguished expression. She asks what a young girl is doing there, and more importantly, if she's injured or lost. The younger-looking elder calls her auntie and says that the little bastard is inside. Confusion is evident on the face of the protagonist's ex-girlfriend at this statement. Inside the building, the small fox asks if it's safe to knock him unconscious again as soon as he wakes up. But our protagonist explains that there's no need to worry since he's quite resilient. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurs, startling him. Something flew from the doorway and crashed into the wall. It's the protagonist's ex, now impaled by the enormous sword of the little girl. Floating in the air, the girl remarks that they are just getting started, so Yanhui shouldn't be complaining. Sitting on the sword, the small girl questions whether the older girl won't respond. The ex, taken completely by surprise, asks the younger-looking one to at least put up a fight. With her hands covered in green energy, the ex-girlfriend begins to pull the sword from her chest. She yanks it out and curses, throwing the sword upward. The little girl hovers in the air, watching the scene unfold amusingly. The ex throws the sword and yells for the brat to go to hell. The attack is powerful and incredibly strong. Even so, the wound in her chest starts throbbing in pain, while her shirt struggles under the weight of her chest. She wonders who this brat is. Perched on the sword, the younger-looking girl asks if that's all, as the fight seems to be reaching its end. The ex-girlfriend then asks her demon what she should do since she is no match for her. But when she receives no response from the demon, she remains confused. We see a scene from a day ago in an unknown house. The protagonist's board game partner is staring at herself from the past. Both seem uncomfortable with the strange connection. But soon, the silence is broken as the girl lets out a sigh. She reveals that she's tense because this is the start of the 146th game. But suddenly, something explodes in her mind, grabbing her attention. It's the strong cry of a demonic sword. We see a distant cabin in the forest, seemingly isolated. The boy in the demon's grasp starts screaming for release. He then asks if the entity knows who he is. He reveals himself as a member of the celestial demonic sect. The demon isn't surprised and even recalls that the young man indeed belongs to the celestial demonic sect. But he informs him that such a sect, as fertile as it is, won't be difficult for him to massacre. With tears in his eyes, the boy realizes that this Kai is extremely powerful, and so he cries out for help. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurs at the entrance of the demon's residence. We see a huge trail of dust rising and falling at the now open doorway. A leg steps through. It's a woman who just entered. She stomps the ground with a strong, imposing force, almost as a threat. The spirit recognizes that this Kai is unusual. It belongs to someone unique. The figure before him is, in fact, his long-awaited mistress. Crying and with a flushed face, he starts shouting for her as he runs toward her. The girl pushes him away with her foot, telling him to stop making such a fuss, to which he agrees. The girl identifies him as the demon allied with Yanhui. He confirms, stating she's right, and admits that the familiar feeling of being stepped on is indeed his mistress. The girl hears someone pleading to be saved. It's the boy from before, who explains that he is the son of the patriarch of the celestial demonic sect, and therefore, if she lets him go, he will do whatever she wants. He explains that the sect specializes in cultivating magic and is no less powerful than the Phoenix group. The girl appears surprised by this statement and approaches. She sits on the demon, stating that she doesn't lack men, only dogs to obey her. She instructs the flame spirit to keep the boy alive, as he is a good lad, which the spirit confirms. The green-haired boy thanks her for sparing his life. But with a blank stare, he declares that now that his life is spared, he will be her slave. However, he quickly falls asleep, enraging the demon, who tells him not to be disrespectful and idiotic toward his mistress. The spirit then explains his plan, to take Yanhui as his host in order to regain his strength. Currently, the demon is hiding in an abandoned factory, and at the current pace, he estimates he can recover his strength in less than 10 days. The girl then asks if Yanhui is completely enslaved to his control, to which he confirms, saying she is a lustful woman and therefore easily manipulated. Our young lady remarks that this isn't the best plan, but it will work for now, and regardless, she needs to find someone named Lin Mo. In the end, Han Xinyi reveals that there is a game that hasn't ended, so she cannot allow anything to happen to her other challenger, which the demon acknowledges. The spirit then advises that his mistress should collect the fragments as soon as possible, since the situation is growing larger and worse by the second. But the girl insists there's no rush, as the Emperor has also come to this world, leaving the demon utterly shocked. She explains that the memories between the fragments of the demonic sword do not communicate with each other, but some time ago, she sensed a breath from one of the fragments. However, just as she was about to reach it, the sword's ki was completely dissipated by a stronger ki she had only seen in the Emperor in 1,000 years. The demon considers using He Yan Hui merely as bait to lure the Emperor, then orders her to go and kill that brat. She questions how she's supposed to kill the girl, admitting that she's never been in a major battle since childhood and knows nothing about martial arts. Soon, the younger-looking girl decides to use her secret sword technique. The protagonist X claims she doesn't even know how to fight or engage in combat, so the demon decides that she is useless and takes control of her body. Her pupils dilate into a different shape as she says that this is something special. She declares that the old woman is a waste and therefore she cannot be allowed to live even a second longer. With sinister laughter, the spirit charges forward with the girl's body toward the younger-looking one. Suddenly, a sword flies toward his back while he keeps a bizarre grin. The spirit manages to deflect the sword with a sidekick. Laughing, he grabs the weapon, claiming it as his own to use however he pleases. Tossing the blade, he asks if the grandma likes playing with flying swords. He then launches the second sword, saying he's returning it to her since she seems to enjoy these silly games. The small girl protects herself using a purple spiritual barrier, deflecting the attacks in another direction. The demon summons an artifact announcing that he's going to give her a second gift. It's a giant viper, charging toward the small grandma in an instant. The girl seems impressed, acknowledging that it's a long-lost secret technique, but unfortunately, its power is much weaker than what's described in the book. As the snake prepares a deadly attack, the girl remarks that since Yanhui is angry, it will be much easier to deal with her. With her sword in hand, she adds that if she weren't always crying, she would be ashamed to kill her all at once. Due to her immense weakness, the snake bites down and receives a direct slash to its mouth. It's split apart by the girl's massive strike, launching its head into the air. Suddenly, the enormous energy that was shooting from the serpent's mouth flies toward the sky. Its form begins to disintegrate as its technique is completely defeated. In the sky above, someone observes the entire scene. It's the protagonist's board game companion, watching everything in her demonic form. We see the ex-girlfriend's face distort as the spirit leaves her body and mind. The purple energy exits her body, gathering into a single point. It forms a fragment of the previously lost sword belonging to the demon girl. The younger-looking elder declares that it finally abandoned its host to stop being useless. She admits she never thought it would be a sword, much less a simple broken sword, and thus feels a bit disappointed. But soon fear grips her, as the sword seems offended by being called broken. The protagonist's companion remarks that it's quite shameless to kick a dog when the owner isn't around, and that the sword should be more careful. The girl, sweating profusely from tension, recognizes this key as belonging to a high-level underworld demon. Her breathing begins to falter and catch in her throat as she feels the overwhelming pressure. Slowly turning her face, she witnesses this terrifying scene. She struggles to regain her breath, feeling suffocated by the sheer power disparity. Staring up at the girl above her, the elder can only tremble at the frightening sight. The horned girl taunts her, saying she's shameless for daring to stare at her so boldly. Suddenly, with incredible speed, the demoness vanishes from above the elder. Holding her sword, she remarks that it's no wonder she was so hard to find since her kai was being suppressed by the seemingly older girl. The elder attempts to use her purple energy to fend off the attack and defeat the demon girl. She uses the 8th level Taoist sealing technique, causing pink bands to start wrapping around the demoness's face and body. But through those bands, a clear look of menace is visible, one that belongs to someone vastly superior to that technique. As the spell nears completion, the bands begin to change to a deep orange hue. The nails anchor into the ground, finalizing the invocation of her sealing technique. The elder uses the power of the body she possesses to borrow the 10,000 talismans of the 8 directions. She initiates the suppression of evil with the 10,000 talismans to seal the demon as well. Despite this, pink energy emanates from the massive seal. Still tense, she uses 4 celestial flames to enhance the spell's effectiveness. She then invokes the red lotus seal of the infernal sky to support the process. She completes the seal, closing off the demoness entirely. She begins reciting a higher vow, using the law of equality to make all demons tremble and hide. She decides to combine her techniques to perform her final spell. The energy-made Buddha clasps its hands in prayer as its tears fall. Suddenly, a crack appears, spreading rapidly. The enormous statue that just emerged begins to shatter deeply under the power of the sealed being. This was not the outcome she expected. It simply should not be possible. A bright red light starts emanating from the figure. She recalls hearing that Hongling is the strongest fighter and that no one can surpass her, but she isn't impressed by the so-called strongest fighter's power. It's time to end this brat's fun. Despite feeling apprehensive, she says things aren't over yet. But standing beside her, the strange woman is already at her side, curious about what's supposedly not over. At that moment, the girl realizes she's in serious trouble as her abdomen has been sliced without her even noticing. The demon woman remarks that when she says it's over, it really is over. She continues on her path while the poor redhead of modest stature collapses to the ground. She laments to her master that the body she currently possesses is too weak, and even with total control, she would be incapable of using a fraction of her true power. Sweating coldly from the blood loss, the modestly tall woman struggles to reach for something. She needs to retrieve her blade to try and do something. After all this time, she should have noticed by now. But even with her there, it still hasn't appeared. The well-endowed companion looks back, seeing the blade approaching her, but she is unimpressed. She simply prepares to deflect it with her own weapon. The metal seems like butter against her blade. She had hoped to use Yutang to understand what she intended to do. But it's a pity that she's useless, not even fit for testing. This makes her sigh in slight frustration at the ease of her challenge. In the silence, she shouts out for the immortal emperor. She's certain he's already seen enough and could show himself and step out of hiding. Provoking him, she says that he must have become like the men of this world, a great coward. The strongest man is mediocre, incapable of ruling the world with such small power. If that's the case, it's simply disgusting. Starting with this modestly tall woman, she shouts again, so all those hiding can hear. If she's not stopped now, she'll take everyone on a first-class, one-way ticket to find out if there's life after death. As the demoness begins her countdown, she warns that if anyone plans to intervene, they better hurry up because she's counting to 3. One of the women covers her mouth to stop herself from saying anything. The young man remains in his cage doing nothing. The demoness starts her count. A drop of water drips onto the boy's head and he appears oblivious to the situation. Suddenly, he decides to pay attention. 2 seconds have already passed in her countdown. Then a desperate voice shouts, pleading not to be sent to the world of regrets. On the ground, the small figure writhes in agony. The silver-haired woman continues to hold her mouth shut. Meanwhile, the demoness is delighted with this reaction. But since nothing was done, the countdown ends and a massive pillar of energy shoots up into the sky. The area becomes the epicenter of a powerful manifestation of energy. Before her, a mighty vortex forms. Its light is so intense that one must shield their eyes to avoid being blinded. Finally, the one she had been waiting for appears in the place. This makes her happy, as she is sure the immortal emperor has not died and is still alive. Far away, someone questions what has happened to the sky. Looking at the camera, they note that a pillar of light has formed at the abandoned factory. Even though it's a cold day, the area around the light is incredibly hot, pushing away the rain. Anxious about what's happening, he grabs the phone from the person recording. He shows that the light has cleared the skies, speculating that it could be a beam from a satellite. Then he notices something emerging from the clouds. Someone else is watching the live stream. She becomes annoyed when the transmission signal cuts off as the beam appears. Inside her home, someone asks if she has done her homework since she spends all day on her phone. She insists she has completed her assignments. Humsey, the location where the beam appeared, is far from her, and it's where Lin Mo currently resides. First the search for Yanhui and now this pillar of light. It's been a long and restless day. As she opens the door, the emperor appears, pushing the demoness by the head. Even after they've left, the wind continues to blow through the area. Finally, the air settles, but the window is shattered. The girl has no idea what just happened there. They simply crossed the entire building. The demoness taunts him, saying that without the sacred sword, he is like an old man without tadalafil, completely useless. Delivering a blow, she declares that he is now nothing more than a punching bag. The force of the impact sends him crashing to the ground, destroying nearby buildings. Not satisfied, she begins to gather aura between her hands. She's preparing a massive attack. As she charges it, she chants an incantation. That dark power pierces the sky like a sword. A peculiar shape starts to appear above. Among the clouds, they look like a giant pair of eyes. It reveals itself as an enormous creature, similar to a giant snake. Opening its massive jaws, it releases a beam of energy aimed at the immortal emperor. From above, she's incredulous that he was unable to dodge the attack. But soon as she realizes that things did not go as planned, he remains unscathed. She hadn't expected him to have such a strong protective seal. It's not fair. He knew demon kings were cruel, but it seems their descendants are even worse, showing no regard for innocent lives. Observing her, he realizes that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and the son is just like the father. This enrages her, as she believes someone like him has no right to interfere in her family's affairs. The serpent launches a massive attack directed at the city. She shows no concern for the civilians and states that they may live only if the emperor dies. The serpent gathers more energy, closing its mouth. This time it strikes the ground with a continuous beam. It shoots through the entire city in a straight line. Wherever the beam passes, the destruction is total and flames burn without cease. From above, the Demon King watches her handiwork with satisfaction. She's pleased as the Emperor's defenses have now cracked, and she waits to see what he's capable of doing. He begins to channel energy into 2 of his fingers. He moves them delicately, to her surprise. This movement is familiar and she recognizes it. It's a sword technique. As she realizes this, the serpent is already struck. Then, as she looks at the creature, she notices the severe damage. Finally, after some time, the Emperor wields a sword. Now it's with him. It's a good embryo, and it was worth the wait. She realizes that he placed a charm on the sword when she wasn't looking, forcing her to reveal her weakness. But his plan would only work if he could wield the trash in his hands. Creating a circle with the sword, he prepares a technique. He then brings the sword down, performing a slash. It's a secret technique, the refinement of the divine flame. She feels satisfied, as he always has something new to show. An intense clash of energies occurs between them. The two begin to collide at incredible speed in the sky. Quickly reacting, the Demon Queen catches him off guard. After several attacks, she manages to land a slash on him. Even so, he smiles as he had finally arrived, just slower than the sword. Then the figure representing him vanishes and rays of light emerge from it. Realizing that the figure was burned, she understands it was a clone, but she doesn't know what passed through it. A small paper doll suddenly appears in front of her, completely pierced. Meanwhile, two combat planes approach, unleashing bursts of gunfire. She assumes this is also part of the Emperor's plan, but modern weapons lack any aura. They are just high-speed projectiles. Unimpressed, she makes a move with her sword, mockingly calling them brave. Still, one of the planes manages to evade the aura attack. It launches a missile toward its target. However, to her, that attack is far too slow. But the missile corrects its trajectory. This catches the Demon Queen off guard. She is engulfed in a massive explosion. The target is locked and the planes continue their assault. A barrage of missiles explodes upon impact. Everything is going according to his plan, but he knows modern weapons won't hold her for more than a minute. Without his sword, he isn't a match for her, so he needs something as powerful as his sacred sword. The forging had been completed during the battle. Now only one final and crucial step remains. He sighs as it is time to begin the cooling process. With little fuel remaining, the planes prepare to return to base. Suddenly, an eruption occurs in the city's ground. A massive, shapeless hand rises toward the sky. It grabs one of the planes. Over the radio, the pilot warns the others to get away as quickly as possible. The other plane attempts to evade the hand, but it is struck as the hand uses its companion as a weapon. An eyeless creature appears, roaring furiously. The creature is colossal, dwarfing the nearby buildings. From above, the Demon Queen declares that this is what happens when they interfere in her fight. Now they all must die. Someone informs her that the beast is a roaming source of spiritual energy, a perfect opportunity to eliminate the Emperor before he completes his plan. But from above, something catches her attention. It distracts her, drawing her focus. A small child is crying, searching for his father. As he cries, he says he's very scared. While he shouts for his father, one of the creature's claws moves toward him. It's only a moment away from turning him into a splatter. The Demon Queen watches closely. The little boy continues crying, unaware that he's about to become a sandwich filling. This scene makes her close her eyes as she recalls something. She remembers when she was also small, searching for her father. With all the destruction, the city is in chaos and all the exits are blocked. In the middle of the traffic, a call goes unanswered. The man says his wife never answers, even when it's important. Unfortunately, they can't get a phone signal. But through the news, they learn that the monster that had appeared in the city center has vanished suddenly. Inside the car, the man worries about the rain that has begun to fall. His daughter mentions that the news had predicted no rain for that day. Beside the bridge, a massive cyclone is forming, gathering water into its body. Some curious onlookers get out of their cars to film it, completely disconnected from the reality and the risk it poses. At the center of the cyclone is the Emperor's blazing sword. He is manipulating the water. It's how he's cooling his sword. The energy condenses, releasing a shockwave that creates waves in the water. The force of the waves drags cars on the bridge, likely sweeping away the fools filming as well. Afterward, a thick fog forms over the area. The girl exits the car despite her father's warnings to stay inside. She looks toward where the river was and she can't believe what she sees. All the water that had been below has disappeared, as if it had been drained. High above, the Emperor stands before his sword. He reaches out a hand to the weapon's hilt. The moment he touches it, an intense burst of light is released. The light is visible even within the mist. The energy released is so powerful that the fog is immediately dispersed. Now the blade he's been preparing is ready to strike down the unprepared. He looks at the fruit of his effort. It had been a long wait. In the mist, the Demon Queen states that he has been playing the fool while holding a child's hand. She says she wasn't waiting there for him. The little kid smiles because he's finally found his irresponsible father. They embrace and the Demon Queen tells the adult to get out of there because it's not safe. She doesn't like dragging out fights, so she plans to end this quickly, just as they did in her previous life. The Emperor agrees with her. Positioning her sword above her head, she begins chanting an invocation for a powerful barrier spell. Not to be outdone, the Emperor also summons an entity, but his is adorned with sacred colors. She swings her sword, launching a dark attack. The Emperor responds with an attack that resembles a Shounen hero's energy. The energies clash violently in the sky. This is what she was waiting for, and now that he has his sword, there are no excuses when he loses. Placing his fingers in front of his face, the Emperor begins a prayer. Markings appear on his face, and the sword he created disintegrates. Observing this, the Demon Queen realizes he's using a forbidden sword technique. This is what he used the last time, and she should have prepared her demonic sword for this because, in its current state, it's no match. Without the strength to resist his technique, she is struck. A massive beam of light continues to advance toward her. In the sky, a mysterious rift begins to form. Opening slowly, it reveals another dimension. With such power, the sky is tearing apart. Completely wounded and exhausted, she admits it's overwhelming. The Emperor stands before her, watching her closely. Looking at her, he states that a winner has already been decided. But someone interrupts, claiming that the battle is just beginning. Severely wounded, the Demon Queen mentions what she's seeing. It's the other half of the magic sword. The sword speaks, revealing that it had hidden well to gather its pieces, but the woman possessed many of them. In her injured state, she declares that even that fake sword wouldn't be able to land a fatal blow on her. Soon, she'll recover from her wounds, and unlike him, she still has a magic sword. Even if it's a mediocre victory, a winner has already been decided. Unexpectedly, the sword pierces her from behind, emerging through her chest. The sword refuses to take orders from someone whose energy is so weak. Now the two of them will die in this place. The cursed sword intends to start with the weakest one first. Telling her to return home, in this case to hell, it charges forward. It violently strikes the spot where the demon queen was. But something is wrong, there are no guts, only concrete. Mockingly, the sword remarks that the emperor played the hero, saving the damsel in distress, but he's just a fool. Barely able to stand, the demon queen asks to be put down as she didn't consent to the touch. Being saved by the emperor is worse than being cut by the cursed sword and more hateful than being a bald woman. Looking at her, he asks her not to act so stubbornly and to conserve her energy if she doesn't want to die right there. He has a plan, but he needs her help. The sword had transformed into a massive monster, and like a nosy gossip, it wanted to know what they were whispering about. This enrages it, as it wants to listen too, since it loves a good piece of gossip. With his eyes closed, the emperor prepares another spell. It's the prison of light, and multiple beams of energy descend from the sky. They strike the sword monster, pinning it to the ground. This surprises the creature, as now not only can it not move, but it also won't find out what they were gossiping about right in front of it. This prison can only be broken with yang energy. Surely, a powerful sword like it should be able to use some yang energy. But maybe it can't, as it is incompatible with this new world. The comment infuriates the sword so much that, if it had a traditional brain, it would have had a severe stroke. Gathering its strength, it breaks free from the prison, showing off its muscular physique. It's not afraid of needles or underground labs. Flexing its physique, it asks the powerful emperor if he still dares to disrespect a body with only 3% body fat. Preparing a mighty punch, it declares that he has little fat left and is holding a dying horse in his arms. It's shameful, and now it's going to send both of them to hell. However, with the woman in his arms, the emperor snaps his fingers. The monster sword is struck above where its floating rib would be. If it had a liver and were an alcoholic, it would have been fatal. Realizing the extensive damage, it wonders how it was possible. It seems it really was an alcoholic. Having gathered all the fragments, its peace must be within this enhanced body as well. The emperor had transformed that fragment into bait after refining it. It was his trump card against the demon queen, but he ended up using it against the sword. The monster panics as its yang energy drains away and its well-maintained physique fades, leaving its veins empty. Now it's time for the demon queen to do her part. To the sword's displeasure, she begins absorbing its energy. Returning to its thin and frail state, the sword is desperate, as it longs to regain its former physique. With a crack appearing on its blade, it curses them both. She was right. The yang power sealed within the sword still remains in his body. Now is the time for them to settle their differences. A massive tongue falls in front of them. It's the beast of chaos, and the sword rejoices, believing that the gods haven't abandoned it. Pleased, it wishes the two of them good luck in dealing with this monstrous creature now. Looking at the emperor, she says she's done her part as agreed, and now she wants to know the next step. He looks up at the sky carefully. The next step is to fix the crack in the sky. But she's a demon. She's only learned destruction techniques. Repair is not her forte. He releases her, telling her she can leave as he can handle it alone. He just asks her to remember what she promised him. Faced with the problem, he brings his hands together and his eyes begin to glow. Separating his palms, a small source of energy appears. He releases it toward the creature, commanding it to return to the other side. As he orders the rift to close, the creature is pushed back. Immediately, the crack in the sky begins to seal. Watching all this, the demoness is impressed by such power. With blood filling his mouth, he says it's not that simple. He coughs, completely drained. Doing that left him with not a single drop of energy remaining. Unexpectedly, a hand grasps him, preventing him from being pulled into the rift. The demoness urges him to hold on a little longer. The tradition of demons states that the more lives they take, the stronger they become. But she didn't get stronger after all the killing. She realized her intention was only to provoke him and then bring the people back to life. For some inexplicable reason, this realization makes the demoness blush. Trusting her, he agrees to fix the situation and leave the consequences to her, as he believes in her word. He hoped she wouldn't change her mind after saving him, and now she is literally saving him. With his body halfway through the rift, she tries to pull him back. She warns him that it's closing and that he isn't moving. Realizing the worst is about to happen, she calls out to him again. Calmly, he remarks that even knowing people would live again, she still saved that little kid. Hearing this, she's immediately taken aback. The emperor says a few more things to her, but they aren't heard. Finally, the rift closes, leaving him on the other side. This infuriates her, as she realizes she wasn't strong enough, until she notices something unusual nearby. A small flame doll rests in her hand. As the sun sets, she sits atop a building. Thoughtfully, she looks at what the emperor left for her. It makes her sigh, feeling a bit disappointed. Raising her hand high, she begins to gather a large amount of energy. From the enormous sphere, multiple beams begin to shoot out across the city. The intense glow reflects on her face. But as the sphere diminishes, the light fades as well. Once the energy dissipates, she costs heavily, weakened by what she did. Resurrecting one person costs 100 years of cultivation, and all those people required much more. Finally, she had done everything she promised. The doll she received starts to disintegrate in the sky. As this happens, she remembers the immortal emperor, especially when she lay dying in his arms. For some reason, she felt her cheeks flush from what he had said to her. She can't seem to get that gray-haired figure out of her mind. All she can think about is his face. Now she remembers him with a special fondness. The woman lies in bed, sleeping like a log. In her head, she thinks about how the woman with red eyes is a demon and that no one should mess with her. A demon hands her a sword to kill the spy of the immortals, who had already slain many of her kind. But she's just a child. The adult urges her to complete the task quickly. Her hands tremble with hesitation. Growing impatient, the adult pushes her. Thus, the blade pierces the prisoner's stomach. It's too much for her to handle, as she's only a child. The adult tells her that this gentleness is a weakness that will one day come back to haunt her. Gradually, the dream shifts. It's she who should reconsider her thoughts on this matter. Now her eyes fall upon something else. The immortal emperor is being pulled into the rift. She just wants him to shut up and try harder to be saved. But he mentions what she did with the lost child. Those words torment her, and she begs him to be quiet. But the emperor only responds with a slight smile. He knew she wasn't a good person, but he didn't expect her to not be entirely bad either. After this intense, troubled dream, she rises from her bed. Her hands clutch the sheets as she feels shaken. At a large table, a shadowy woman recounts the events of the past week. The two fought and destroyed half the city, and a clash of swords even tore through the sky. In the end, some unknown force brought back everyone who had died, but they can't expect that to happen again. One person suggests they might as well sit and wait for death if they trust these clowns. Yang Qianyu questions what else they can do, decides nothing. The Saint Yachi finds it hard to believe that a sword slash could split the sky and open a rift. The sword saint feels embarrassed by this narrative, as she's unaware of any such technique. Lag Sinren tells her not to feel that way, as no immortal could create a hole in the sky. The guy who's into body modifications mentions that old man Zhao was wiped out with a single blow, and they wouldn't stand a chance either. Yutang, with her ample attributes, asks her grandmother if the people there had gathered just to complain. Grandma Bayan tells her granddaughter to be more polite, as she has already spoken with another elder about how they plan to handle this issue. Since ancient times, her clan has overseen oracles, the arms of the divine path that govern the world today, defending the righteous way and eliminating heretics. But the oracle left an enigmatic message. They must drink this tear and do what is right, and they sealed it without knowing its effects. The blonde wants to know what this tear has to do with them and their plans. Her grandmother recalls that when Yutang arrived at the temple, she had so many wounds that her chances of survival were slim, which makes Yutang ask how she's still breathing. The seal they had placed broke, and its contents fused with her. She is now the daughter of destiny from the heavens. This is their trump card, and they need to help Yutang cultivate. One of them suggests bringing in a man from his clan to pair with her, aiding her cultivation. But the woman with the slight shadow says it needs to be someone with a pure yang body, shocking Yutang that they're taking this seriously. A man with such energy is naturally very handsome, so they would have to choose the most beautiful, which further annoys Yutang. The guy with the piercing mentions that he must also be young, as an age difference would be counterproductive, so they should look in schools. That's why there's a beauty contest in progress. Hearing this, Yutang is upset that she doesn't have a say in the matter. Now the red-eyed girl learns about this new plan. It's necessary for Yutang to double her cultivation. There will be a beauty contest among students, putting him on the list of potential candidates. She wants him to win it, as it would bring them closer to the Phoenix Group and the Daughter of Destiny. In the meeting, they also mention something else, and she wants to hear it. They plan to use all they can to find the Emperor and His Majesty. After hearing this, she releases the guy to leave. But a week has passed since everything in her aura still hasn't recovered. This body is weak, and since her last resurrection, her foundations have been damaged. Even if this world isn't dangerous, things have become complicated with the rebellion of the magic sword, as the Emperor and the demon's sword are her enemies. She will remain hidden as Han Xinyi for now, but once she recovers, she will pursue the sword first. She says she'll keep the pot, and the man tells her to move to the next counter. He also asks if she likes monarchs, which embarrasses her. A small girl with foxy ears greets her master. She asks if he's all right, but the young man is meditating, deeply focused. However, he had instructed her to keep an eye on Yutang with the paper doll, so she summarizes the meeting's events. She didn't hear everything clearly, but she mentioned the beauty contest and how they want to double Yutang's cultivation to face the demon queen. Additionally, they're searching for her master and the demon, so he dismisses her as he needs to focus. The use of forbidden techniques affects his mortal body, making it feel as if he has no power left, so he must keep Lin Mo under the radar for a while. He makes a precise move on the board. His opponent has lost to him once again. She acknowledges this, but thinks she only let him win because he was kidnapped because of her, believing that a mortal would never truly beat her. She recalls that she promised him a wish if he won, assuming it would be something like going out together or something typical. To her surprise, he says that's boring and suggests they discuss it another time. She hadn't played well today, she seems sleepy and should have washed her face before coming to school. This infuriates her, as she tried to be nice to the mortal, but it only inflated his ego more. She vows never to let him win again. A young woman greets Lin Mo, mentioning that she hasn't seen him all day. She says there's a beauty contest and she and her sister would have voted for him, but he's not on the list. He finds it too tedious and has no interest in participating. It's hard to believe that someone so vain would find a contest like this boring. So she thought that he was actually playing hard to get, so she decided she would be the one to sign him up for the contest. It seems that organizing such a contest at schools was way too easy. So far, the first place belongs to a smelly nerd with visual impairment. She refuses to marry this clown. Until, among them, she came across Lin Mo. In front of her phone, the girl called her friends over to see something. It was a video of Shen playing the guitar. The guy's charisma made them a bit wet. In their mouths, of course. But she said they were animals, devouring Lin Mo with their eyes. Wisely, one of them pointed out that the same person criticizing had liked and saved that video. Not to mention she even downloaded it to watch later alone in the dark, which is very suspicious. Trying to defend herself, she said they were just classmates and it was merely sympathy on her part. Ready to stir up trouble, her friend said she knew the girl desperately wanted to sleep with Lin Mo in the same bed. She shouted back that she would love to do that because he's handsome, fit, and well-endowed, and if she was being honest, it shouldn't be a problem. From afar, two envious boys called her superficial, but in truth, they wished they were the target of that attention. He swore he would win the contest, spending 8 hours a day taking care of his photos. Lin Mo had already surpassed him, and in first place was an immature clown who looked like a pet shop animal. He said he would work even harder, but his friend brought him back to reality, saying he didn't stand much of a chance. Someone mentioned that the great Shen Lishan was there. The androgynous and feminine boy with a genetic visual deficiency walked through the corridors being harassed. Then he said he was done for the day, because now he wanted to talk to Yutang alone. She thought he might not even know the real reason for the contest, but she was curious to know what he had to say. With a different voice, he said he hoped to continue receiving their support. But Yutang noticed this change. The boy approached with some cookies he had made for her, but his voice changed when he asked her to try one of them. But she refused to eat anything that clown made as he looked like someone who didn't wash his hands. She left calling him disgusting, but she noticed that the voice effect produced by the divine demon didn't affect her. Perhaps it's because she is the daughter of destiny. Yutang was definitely irritated, feeling disgusted by the guy with glasses. She knew he was a cultivator using this ability to get attention from girls, and she didn't want to join him. But he was already on her grandmother's list, so she might not be able to tell her who he really is. While she sat at the table, her friend said Lin Mo had shown up. It's too rare to see him alone. Shen has been attracting all the girls lately, and Yutang had forgotten he was in second place. Her friend said she should go talk to him, which made her blush completely. She was so embarrassed that she hadn't even thought of it as a possibility, because they are just friends and nothing more than that. However, she didn't finish the sentence. Her mouth refused to say they were just friends. She remembered when he playfully punched her in the side. In fact, they are just a pair of friends. But that's not what her memories tell her. She quickly remembered his shirt being open, revealing a modestly defined chest. Her friend said she didn't hear her properly and wanted to know if they were just classmates. However, saying that with a nosebleed was not convincing at all. Thinking about what she felt for that boy, she hurried out of the cafeteria. Yuving walked down the corridor, completely immersed in her conflicting feelings. Some boys were about to talk to her. Her goal was to take better pictures of him, because without that, it would be hard to beat Shen with his voice ability. She had access to the best photographers in the city, and Lin Mo certainly wouldn't refuse the invitation. But as soon as she made the offer to him, he refused immediately, and he even said that if she was so idle, she should get a part-time job. Not to mention she was just bothering him. She should find someone else to do that. And there's an even more important reason. He thought to himself that he wasn't feeling well and needed to spend all of his free time cultivating. But to her, he said he had recently been kidnapped and preferred not to trust girls. This last explanation seemed plausible, and she accepted his words. At the gym, she punched the punching bag with all her strength. Thinking about the situation, she imagined it was all her fault, because she had promised to protect him. She had told him everything would be fine. But in the end, it sounded like she was lying. Because of that, he no longer trusted her, and there was nothing she could do about it. It was a situation that filled her with rage. Thinking about all this, she started sobbing uncontrollably. Imagining marrying that disgusting, almost blind guy was worse than death. She soon became angry again and began beating the punching bag. A woman with huge biceps and a masculine face asked why the gym was empty. The attendant said Yutang had reserved the entire facility for herself today. Since she arrived, she had taken off her shirt and started hitting the punching bag, and she hadn't stopped since. A wealthy girl who paid for this, and she's just a student. She had wanted to fight someone for a while, and this was a good opportunity. The guy said it was a bad idea because the little girl was angry with life. But the woman said she didn't care and even suggested giving the girl her money back because she didn't mind. Approaching her, she said the girl wasn't bad but lacked endurance, and she introduced herself as the personal trainer of the gym, Ha Yun. The girl told her to leave, otherwise she would beat her up. Full of attitude, the juice-drinking friend said if the little girl didn't keep her promise, she would be a big coward. Outside, bystanders watched as her body flew out of the first-floor window. As if that wasn't crazy enough, the blonde girl jumped through the window, ready to fulfill her promise of beating that woman up. No one knew why they were fighting, but it looked more like a one-sided beating. Her mask had fallen off, and the person begged the young cultivator to spare her life. Removing the mask, she wanted to know why she was wearing it. She had a scar on her face, and the blonde said it didn't make any difference. She was teased either way. However, she still had unfinished business and hoped to beat her up as promised. She promised that if she touched her again, things would be different, and she would end up with a cement block at her feet littered with the fish. A policeman finally arrived since there was a report of a crime in progress. Seeing the scared woman, he recognized her as a notorious pervert with a bounty on her head. She could abuse an 80-year-old man. Thus, the blonde went from villain to hero in the blink of an eye. In addition to receiving apologies from the bystanders, she also received the reward for capturing the fugitive. As if that wasn't enough, she was even interviewed for doing something so heroic. The next day, she was once again in the cafeteria with the same feeling as the day before. Her friend thought Yutang had called the red-haired girl over to talk about what she did with the fugitive, but that wasn't it. Every time she went out alone, she either earned money or met handsome guys, and her grandma said she needed to find a partner soon. So she wanted to know if she could use this luck to capture Lin Mo. But Lin Mo was known for being cold and calculating, and he recommended that she date Shen instead. Meanwhile, the other one couldn't stop coughing because she had choked. She was confident and only wanted to know everything about him, what he liked, what he disliked, his daily routine, blood type, address, nothing too invasive. It seemed that Lin Mo was the best friend of the red-haired girl, almost like a brother. If she wanted to know more about him, she had better start handing over coins because nothing comes for free. This made the blonde smile at her audacity. If she said something useful, she would get 500,000 yuan. But if she talked nonsense, the redhead didn't even listen and said she was a woman of her word. Pulling something out of her bra, she said there was no turning back now. All those notes were related to his habits and interests, which she had been collecting over time. Now the blonde found herself overwhelmed with material to decipher. However, there was one thing she could confirm in advance. Every day at lunch, he didn't eat in the cafeteria. He got his meal and disappeared. But the blonde had already noticed this too. A friend said he played chess on the terrace with a girl every day. As soon as she heard it was a girl, the blonde felt a wave of jealousy and wanted to know who this bold person was. Pointing to where the food was, she said the girl was right over there. So the blonde turned to see who it was, as she had never heard of anyone playing chess at the school. It was the red-eyed girl, Han Sinny. Upon seeing this, the blonde became even more surprised. She hadn't expected that. Then, looking at her, she remembered something. She was dead, she kept saying and repeating it. Because of a stupid game, she was ignoring her friend's life. Her friend told her to be careful because Han Sinny was a strong competitor, but the blonde said they were friends. At least they were that once. Sitting on the terrace under the cloudy sky, she said he had finally arrived. He said the weather was bad and that there were plenty of empty rooms. They didn't need to stay on the terrace. But their battle started on the terrace, and it would end on the terrace. She asked if it scared him, but he said she was joking and mentioned the forecast for that day predicted rain and snow. So he was worried that a certain girl would get all wet and attack him with her ample, juicy, and abundant arms and attributes. Not to mention that he was recently kidnapped and he doesn't trust girls, but she threw her coat at him so she wouldn't have to apologize if he felt cold in the rain. Lin Mo looked at the coat in his hands. While his colleague watched him, her cheeks flushed. He remained alert, thoughtful. Meanwhile, the girl turned her face, somewhat annoyed. He wouldn't wear that coat, but she told him to put it on quickly so he wouldn't have to apologize later when he lost. He would only stay there to avenge yesterday's defeat. Next time the weather was bad, he wouldn't come to the terrace. As for her, she just didn't want to be misunderstood. He said the sleeves were short, but it wasn't tight, so she boasted that her bust size was 36. But immediately he asked what number that was, leaving her embarrassed. Anyway, it wasn't the time for her to think about that now, as the rain was approaching. It started raining and the girl was still burning with embarrassment. She said his mouth was cursed, and that it only rained because of him, but he had just read the news. That was enough for him, and he said he was going home. As soon as he turned his back, she told Lin Mo to stop. What she lost, he told her to wash her face and come back, and that's what she did. And now it was raining. Today they would play no matter what. Trying to be spontaneous, she invited him to play because she needed to beat him today. Looking at him, she felt annoyed because of the expression on his face. Irritated, she told him to go home if he didn't want to play with her. The girl stood in the rain, her clothes becoming transparent, feeling upset with Lin Mo. After venting, she looked at him discreetly. To her surprise, Lin Mo agreed to play, but only one match. Now it was his turn in the game. Realizing they were about to play, she looked at him a bit happier. Only to say that, actually, it was her turn to play. Because she was so powerful, she spent much of her life being feared, never having a friend or anyone she could trust. She was prepared to be the queen of demons, to commit genocides and lead. She didn't need to feel affection for anyone, but she managed to feel that in this world. Someone who accepted her spontaneous invitations. Someone who wanted to do things she liked to do in her company. For the first time, she felt joy in doing something like that. He sneezed, and the little girl wanted to know if her master was okay. He said he was fine and wanted to know how the Dark Gate was doing. Everything was fine. She had published all the seinen she had received from him, and 8 had already been sold. That way, there would be compasses for her to find yin energy, so the demonic sword wouldn't dare to be so aggressive. She should hide everything related to cultivation at home until the wall that was destroyed could be repaired. Suddenly, a woman appeared, calling him by name. She wanted to know what he had done with Yutang, as she had received several gifts from her, and the girl said she wanted to talk to him. Lin Mo said he had done nothing and hoped she would knock on the door next time. But they had guests, and she wanted him to go downstairs to greet them, but it would be a hassle for him, and he needed to take a bath. This upset her because Yutang was after him and he ignored her, but a marriage between them would be excellent for his family. She returned and asked the blonde to wait because Lin Mo was taking a bath to look even more handsome. The woman said she, her husband, and her son needed to leave, and the blonde could stay with Lin Mo, but she just wanted to tell him something and leave right after. She called her husband to leave and said they would only return the next day after lunch, but the blonde said it wasn't necessary. The poor blonde just wanted to apologize, but the more she spoke, the more she was misunderstood. She was so nervous that she felt the need to go to the bathroom. So she began walking around the house looking for the bathroom. Then she saw a small crack open in a door. Unexpectedly, Lin Mo came out wearing only a towel, showing off his chiseled physique with no apparent fat like a Greek deity. That's when he noticed someone standing in front of him, wearing just a towel. With the bulge clearly visible, he told her to say what she came to do there. But her thoughts were racing, as all she wanted was to get a closer look at that bulge. She apologized, saying she was looking for the bathroom and didn't know where it was. She insisted she hadn't seen anything, hadn't looked at anything, and that it wasn't her intention to see that bulge through the towel, and if she did see something, she'd already forgotten. But recalling the luck of the daughter of destiny, she started to wonder if her lustful thoughts had become reality. She was sure that something strong and intense was going to happen now, starting with her own feelings. Now she wasn't sure what she was feeling in her chest. Gathering courage, she told Lin Mo that it was still too early for them to do this. Unfortunately, she didn't finish her sentence, as she felt something strong in her chest. It was a punch from Lin Mo, determined to defend his purity from voluptuous women. He had mastered the technique of protecting his innocence skillfully, and he didn't know what she wanted, but it was better if she took care of herself. Back in the room, they had a slightly healthier conversation. The blonde wanted to apologize for being unable to protect him the last time, but for him, that was Yan Hui's fault, not hers. Still, the blonde had bought many gifts for him as an apology, hoping he would accept them. He said it wasn't necessary, but if she wanted to pay for the wall repair, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Since it was already late, he needed to rest, and if she was done, she could leave now. So she left his room, carefully closing the door. Outside, she leaned against the wall, frustrated with their interaction. Slowly, she started sliding down the wall, until she sat on the floor. This wasn't the feeling she wanted in her heart right now, and she began to recall all the moments she had shared with Lin Mo up until then. It made her sadder than she expected. Inside the room, he continued doing his pure boy activities that only exist in fictional narratives. Meanwhile, the blonde looked at him through the broken wall. She entered his room once again, calling his name. Being perfectly direct, she asked him to become her boyfriend. She waited, a bit apprehensive for the response. She said she would only say it once. She didn't want to take advantage of him because of the trauma from the kidnapping, and she knew he hadn't even recovered yet. But she ended up stammering when she tried to continue, until she blurted out that she liked taking him out and liked the scent he left in the helmet. These words seemed effective as he started sweating a little. She liked how he defended his purity when he misunderstood her. He was different from the others, and she probably meant nothing to him. But she would dedicate herself, and one day, she would be good enough for him. All those words exhausted her as if she had run a marathon. Lin Mo stood up and started walking towards her. She didn't know what to do anymore, not even if this would push him away. But she was a determined girl and never said anything without thinking. Giving up wasn't something in her vocabulary. Lin Mo was now against the wall, as no man could resist the declarations of a beautiful woman. The boy was sweating cold. He swallowed hard and prepared to speak. He said they had only known each other for 6 months, and even so, she claimed she liked him. He wanted to know if she thought love was something so superficial. But if that was what she wanted, she should pursue it because she was capable. The girl celebrated with great joy. She said goodbye to him as she was heading home, but she wanted him to join her tomorrow for the photo shoot. From the window, he watched her as the blonde walked away, celebrating. The small woman asked her master if everything was okay and if something was bothering him. She wanted to know why he didn't just say no. She was the daughter of destiny with all the luck in the world. Even if he was strong, he couldn't stop her. Even if he said no, the heavens would help her get what she wanted. But love isn't just a matter of luck. However, if luck touched his heart, which had been alone for 10,000 years, then there was no reason to stop it. This was definitely something to think about. Love-struck and simple people are just as foolish as anyone else. The next day, they told him to look at the camera. Now he is well-dressed and posing for photos. In another outfit, he strikes another pose. This time, he's dressed as an athlete. The blonde says these clothes don't capture his essence, and that the school uniform suits him best. It doesn't make sense to him, but the blonde insists on the school uniform for reasons she doesn't say out loud. Now he's wearing more formal attire. Finally, they reached the voting results. Lin Mo won, but they didn't know his immediate background, so the boy would need to be tested. One of them wanted to know how they would do that. The redhead was in charge of this, and if she was worried, she should show him to them. She immediately remembered the blonde and the reaction she might have. She set the meeting for the next day at the hotel, at 6:30 in the evening. However, they never said whether they would attend or not. But the world was at risk. They needed to be extremely careful with this. After that conversation, he hung up the call. It was finally time to meet Lin Mo. The employee wanted to know how they would handle what she had requested. She wanted to change his scenery, so he brought 20 school-age girls. He ordered their feet to be tied and their legs to be broken. Then he had them thrown into the sea with stones tied to their feet. None of that trash compared to what was in Yutang's arms. Besides not looking exceptional in the photos, Lin Mo didn't seem special. One of them asked why Ju had a sword if she said she would come in casual clothes. She had never parted with her sword. It had been with her entire life. People from all sects were present, and Hongling's granddaughter was either extraordinary or just knave. Someone warned the gray-haired woman to go easy on the drinks because the meeting was important. She was there to see Hongling, and listening to the blondes screaming all day would be unbearable. They finally arrived, and she was waiting to see what kind of person this boy was. She was immediately surprised by what she saw. The blonde arrived with her companion and asked if she was late. It couldn't be. It was as if she could see right through him. Now everyone was seated at the table. He had come to see if any of them had clues about the whereabouts of the venerable demon, and also because the blonde asked him. But from what he could see, he wouldn't be able to count on the help of those women with lascivious gazes. The old woman said staring at the boy like that would ruin their reputation and asked Yutang to introduce him to them. She told everyone he was her boyfriend Lin Mo, but he clarified that they were not that. He skipped the individual introductions, saying he would eat and leave. The gray-haired woman said he was quite the treat. She asked Yutang's puppy if he would like to stop eating and have a private chat with her. She heard he liked tea and would like to offer him some tea that only she knew how to make. The aroma was that of golden silk tea. The dishes in front of him were mediocre, and you should try the delicacy she offered. The blonde immediately sensed something suspicious. She noticed a bit of powder fall from under the woman's nail, possibly party powder or something else entirely. The blonde stood up immediately, asking the mischievous woman what she had put in the tea. In her defense, the slay one said that a lady from the Xiao family shouldn't tarnish her innocence over something she didn't do. She claimed she hadn't put anything in the tea, and if she did, she would cut off her own head and present it as a gift. But if she hadn't done anything, she demanded to borrow her boyfriend for a few days. Hearing this, the blonde was filled with rage, genuinely furious. Approaching her, pressing her own attributes against the others, she dared her to repeat those words if she had the courage. She was certain the tramp had done something, but perhaps it was just provocation. So she told Lin Mo he shouldn't drink what the woman offered. The other woman insisted that it was up to him to decide what he did or didn't do. Whispering to her, she said that no one in the immortal world knew her true identity, and she was willing to reveal it to everyone. The gray-haired one warned the girl to be careful, as it was by her mercy that she had lived so long. The boy realized that she and Yu was quite the troublemaker and wondered if all female cultivators were like that. Once again, she asked if he would like to have some tea, and indeed, it seemed like she had put something in it. It was colorless and odorless, but he felt a strange energy, a kind of venomous parasite, one of the most difficult to distinguish. He couldn't even differentiate them, which is why such a crude method had lasted for so long. Everyone there saw it, but no one did anything. This dinner was undoubtedly a test to evaluate him. If he drank it with his power, the poison wouldn't take effect, which could raise suspicions. But if he refused, they might think he was an expert and would try to confirm it, making his cultivation difficult in the future, as they would always be cautious around him. It was a difficult situation, and he wasn't sure if he could get out of it. But then a hand slammed on the table and grabbed the tea. The blonde drank the entire cup. It was so unexpected that Lin Mo dropped his food from his chopsticks. She drank it for him, hoping they would remember the type of relationship they had if anything happened to her. That was enough, and the old woman said she had brought a treasure and wanted to show it to her. She asked if it wasn't cute, but it was just a strange rat. This rat sought yang energy, looking for people with bodies capable of cultivating, and it seemed they were going to use it to determine if Lin Mo could be her partner or not. There was just one detail about this. In his family, not a single person had been able to cultivate for the past 18 generations. To her surprise, the rat began squealing nonstop. Without leaving the old woman's hand, it was practically going crazy. Everyone was shocked by the rat's intense reaction. The gray-haired woman told the old lady to let the rat move. As soon as she released it, it swiftly leaped across the table towards Lin Mo. Then it jumped at him, but he flicked it away with a single snap of his fingers. Since he was still eating, he asked the old woman to take care of her rat. But he said it didn't matter. It seemed her friends didn't like him, so he was leaving. However, the blonde asked him to wait. She wanted him to at least listen to what she had to say. The one with the blindfold said the rat was always shy. Even if it encountered a body with pure yang energy, it would just observe. Shocked, the old woman said it wasn't just a body with pure yang energy. Tearing up, she said it was the supreme body, something she had only heard of in legends. The Zhao family's daughter was too lucky, which made the old woman literally envious. What happened that night must remain confidential. Anyone who leaked the information would be severely punished. Thinking to herself, the gray-haired woman imagined that Yu-Tang wouldn't be able to resist his body. They left the place on her motorcycle. He wanted to confirm if there really was something in the tea, and the blonde said that woman wouldn't dare do anything against her. And since she hadn't come after her, it meant it wasn't anything serious. Distracted, her eyes widened in shock at the sight in front of her. An unfortunate dog crossed in front of her motorcycle. To avoid killing the animal, she made a risky maneuver, preferring to risk her life and her boyfriend's instead of the animal's. In that moment, all she could see was Lin Mo flying through the air, but she managed to grab his arm. The two ended up falling to the ground. The blonde ended up on top of him, and the boy asked if she could get off. Worried, she wanted to know if he was hurt, but he was fine, as falling off a motorcycle only hurts in real life. He looked curiously at the blonde's hands. Throwing snow in his face, she suggested they have a snowball fight. The poison she drank caused some effects. Childish behavior was one of them, along with facial redness and extreme heat in 9 out of 10 cases. A poison that removes behavioral filters, making the victim susceptible to bullying others or having very lascivious behavior. Thinking about this, he looked at the stunning woman who seemed eager to sit on his face. So he agreed to play for a while, as long as they didn't take too long. It reminded him of the past, when he was asked to play all day. Normal people could take a break, but as a cultivator, he shouldn't. She knew that with demons around, he wouldn't do that. In fact, she had been waiting and waiting for him all this time. She was upset. He still wasn't an immortal emperor, but the elders said he had the potential for it. The girl wanted to know how long it would take him to reach that status. Until he attained immortality, lived in paradise, became an emperor, and defeated the demons. Anxious, she really wanted to know how long it would take. 1,000 years, 10,000 years. If that were the case, it was possible the world would end long before. Besides, it was possible he would never marry a mortal like her. All she wanted now was for him to dedicate half an hour of his day to play with her in the snow. After that, she apologized for putting him in a difficult situation. She told him to go on and be the hero he wanted to be. Perhaps in the next life, they could meet again. Who knows? Because she will keep bothering him to enjoy the snow with her. The monstrous sword says this generation of cultivators is foolish. He shouldn't have given that place to weak mortals. Since the Demon King doesn't care, he's going to destroy that place. The girl crawls. The air is so heavy she can barely breathe. As soon as he gets close to her, the monstrous sword strikes with force. But the Emperor appeared to protect her. Angry at what the sword had done to the place, he launched a strike with his own sword. The monster was irritated because, despite being a demon sword, they had sent a novice to deal with it. He said his brothers would arrive soon and the sword wouldn't be able to escape. But the demon sword wanted to know who was faster, him dying or his brothers arriving. The battle continued with violence amid the burning village. A single blow had been devastating. Then he realized there was something worse than his wounds. The girl he had protected was now flying through the air. It was too late. The demon sword was eager to take her life. But then he noticed something was happening. His feet were being held. The monster told the novice he had been fooled. All his attention was focused on that woman, and now he couldn't move. His fatal blow would kill him, but the woman stepped in his place. He was shocked as she died in front of him. The monster lifted his hand, her body trapped in its claws. Shaking her, he threw the body aside as if it were nothing and said it was now the novice's turn. However, he couldn't complete his execution. The venerable demon was summoning him, and he wondered if his master had learned of his unauthorized actions. Furious, the emperor demanded to know if he was a minion of the venerable demon. Whether he was or not, it was too bold of the novice to ask him that. He should be grateful to the venerable demon because, thanks to his call, he was now a hero among immortals. He turned to Ying as she was in shock and asked if she was okay. Barely able to speak, she said the boy had returned. She wanted to know if it was really him, as she could no longer see anything. Crying, he told her it was indeed him, asking her to hold on a little longer because his brothers were on their way. But she couldn't take it anymore and asked him to listen. Behind the bamboo forest at the cliff's edge, he would have to go alone, but she hoped that in her next life she could accompany him. Her last words to him were an apology. The fire continued to consume the forest amid the emperor's mourning. The future demon king told her father that the sword was problematic and that it was only a matter of time before bigger consequences arose. He couldn't continue to shelter something so problematic. He should learn from her. It wasn't bad to kill and destroy. But her father simply gave her a harsh slap across the face. Killing insignificant people or killing bandits is the same thing. Her weakness would cost everything their ancestors fought for, and perhaps she wouldn't be the next venerable demon. He remembered her requests as it was snowing, and how he never had time for that, until his eyes met something. Looking at the moon, he recalled what she used to say, that if he kept practicing, his hair would turn gray. His memories made him cry, grieving. She told him to be a hero so they could meet in the next life. Now the one standing before him was the blonde. But he remembered the promise of his first love, that she would keep bothering him to play in the snow with her. All he wants now is to stop lamenting and not continue making the same mistakes. The blonde looked at the screen, puzzled. She ended up encountering something unexpected. She needed to read it carefully. Wai Qian had attempted to take her own life and succeeded. She mourned for this woman. Soon after, another message appeared on the computer. The person wasn't well and was canceling that gaming team. Now she was furious with Heng Xinyi. All of this was undoubtedly her fault. If it weren't for the blonde, she and Shinyi wouldn't have ended up in this situation. Almost losing consciousness, she lamented for Wai Kin. Meanwhile, the ominous woman wanted to know what would happen if the blonde ceased to live right there. But she apologized as she hadn't imagined her family would put so much pressure on her because of a tournament. Then another person appeared before her saying that it wasn't true. It wasn't just about the game. She wanted to know how Shinyi was there. Stabbing a knife into her chest, she asked if she really wanted to know how. If that was the case, she should think carefully about it. The truth about the matter. She was sure the blonde would find the answer eventually. Slamming her hands on the desk, the blonde asked her to wait. But now she was alone in the classroom. The blue-haired girl appeared and said it was lunchtime, asking if the blonde had eaten. Approaching her, she wanted to know where Linmo was, and the girl said she knew that question would come up, so she prepared in advance. He was on the terrace and wasn't alone. This made her jealousy grow. Seeing that the blonde was leaving, she asked her not to get into trouble. She didn't want to believe that someone like Shinyi was interested in someone the opposite sex. Besides, she had never heard her say anything about it. She wanted to see with her own eyes what they were doing up on the terrace. Her eyes were in shock. Apparently, it was true what people said. The two were there playing chess. She approached the girl and said that everyone at school knew she liked Linmo, but it seemed like she was unaware of it. But the girl replied that they had been playing there every day since they met, and everyone at school knew that, except for her. The blonde was deeply irritated. Since she was there, she had something to ask her. Something related to her older sister. But the brunette said the question made no sense because neither she nor the blonde's older sister had anything to do with her now. She knew she was at fault, but she just wanted to know why she hated her so much. The brunette stepped even closer to her. Staring directly at her, she said the blonde knew nothing. Curious, she wanted to know what she didn't know and asked her to tell her right away. If she cared so much for Wai Kin, she should search for herself. With her current strength, it shouldn't be difficult. The blonde said that if this was a bad joke, she would make her regret it. Touching Linmo's shoulder, she asked him to come with her. He could play with her, as she was good at it too. But the brunette held the blonde's arm while she did, leaving Linmo and the blonde perplexed. He didn't want their chess tradition to be broken and said the blonde was being too friendly with him. So if the blonde said she was his girlfriend and wanted to know what the brunette was, and she replied that she was the only one at his level in that game. Standing up, he said he didn't belong to anyone, and if they intended to talk, he would leave. Before he could leave, the blonde grabbed his arm. If he was going, he would go with her. Finally, he told Yutang that she was being very childish. She told him he could go and tell the teacher then. But the blonde didn't know why she felt this way every time she saw Linmo in that woman's company. Then Shinyi grabbed her arm. This immediately sent the blonde into a fit of rage. It was the second time she had grabbed her like that. The brunette wanted to know if that was a problem, as she didn't care at all. Furious, the blonde said she had already told her that she liked Linmo. Burning with jealousy, she wanted to know if she was trying to steal him from her. The brunette said she was tired of the blonde harassing a boy like him. Manifesting her aura, she said she wouldn't repeat herself, and the blonde had better let go of her immediately. This irritated Shinyi, as the blonde was just a daughter of destiny, whatever that meant. But the blonde's irritation kept increasing. Her aura grew even stronger as she was upset that an ordinary girl dared compete with an immortal. Thus, her energy manifested more and more. However, she started to get a peculiar feeling. Her hand was now embedded in a massive rock. It was as if she was facing an enormous mountain. She couldn't move a muscle and had no idea how that could be possible. Knowing the brunette for so long, she couldn't believe she could also be an immortal. Now she watched her with much more curiosity. Nearby, Linmo realized that things were getting complicated. He now doubted who Shinyi really was. After the incident, the blonde rode her motorcycle deep in thought. It didn't make sense for Shinyi to be a cultivator, but she would now focus on discovering the truth about what really happened. On the phone, someone told her they had obtained the recording she requested and that the incident involved, but she interrupted them, asking them to send the video immediately. Until then, there hadn't been anything suspicious in the recordings, and she hadn't suspected anything. Since her luck was increasing, that dream must have had a meaning, and now she needed to see it through to the end. Watching the video, she noticed something. It was the building near where the accident happened. In the recording, she could see Xianyu walking, and she recalled the veiled threat she had heard from her. Xianyu was attacking mortals again. This time, she wouldn't forgive her. Inside a club, some guys mentioned that it was a privilege to be with the immortal from the Yang family. Focused on her phone, she told them to interact with each other and not to bother her. It seemed her mind was elsewhere. From what she had researched, Linmo was an ordinary person, but she suspected his past might have been concealed. A supreme body of pure Yang energy. It made her furious that the blonde had obtained something so valuable. A loud impact struck the door. It was the blonde arriving full of rage. The blue-haired guy wanted to know what brought her there. She slammed her hand on the table with the recording. There was something she needed to ask Tianyu. The gray-haired woman said that her family members never changed and that the blonde never had manners. Then she ordered her lackeys to leave. Only the women and the blue-haired guy remained. The blonde wanted to know why she had been with the girl that day. She looked down cynically. She said she didn't know what the blonde was talking about. Since she didn't want to tell, the blonde decided to refresh her memory. In the past, Wai Kin was part of her team, and they had made it to the finals of the spring selection. The team they defeated in the final was called Heaven's Gate. The gray-haired woman asked if she was supposed to be impressed already. Angrily, the blonde ordered her not to lie. She knew that Qianyu was the leader of that team. Out of jealousy, she had injured Sinyi and killed Wei Qin. She did it just to spite the blonde and satisfy her sick pride. Qianyu placed a mocking hand over her mouth. She sighed after hearing everything. Then she started laughing uncontrollably. But the blonde, taking the situation seriously, asked why she was laughing. Qianyu said Yutang was really adorable. She then lit a cigarette patiently. Back then, she was bored and formed a team that ended up losing in the finals. She didn't know anything about the other team and only found out now that it was the blondes. But if she had known it was her on the other side, she certainly wouldn't have missed a second opportunity. The blue-haired guy said that the gray-haired woman came from a traditional family of immortals and wouldn't waste her time with such trivial matters. Since she had been bored back then, she just wanted to walk a little. It didn't mean anything, and she claimed not to recognize that girl. Being in the same recording as her was just a coincidence. Grabbing the phone from her hands, the blonde questioned if it was really just a coincidence. They entered the building together, and Tianyu came out after Wei Qin jumped. That wasn't a coincidence. But the gray-haired woman said many people passed through there, and assuming she had anything to do with it was premature. However, if the blonde wanted to fight, she could go ahead, as she wasn't afraid of her. This time, she would take it seriously and wouldn't hesitate for a second, so it was best for the blonde to leave before she got angry. Furious, the blonde kicked a nearby object. She told the woman to repeat what she said, and the blue-haired guy had to restrain her. He told her he would spare her today as a symbol of gratitude to her father. But as soon as she found the evidence she needed, she would destroy her and her entire family. After saying those words, she began to leave. The blue-haired guy said Yutang was too impulsive, but what she said was serious. With a cold look, the gray-haired woman asked if he didn't believe her. That wasn't what he meant, but it had been a turbulent year, and it wasn't wise to upset the family that supported them the most. Continuing to smoke, she told him he could go and that he didn't mean to wait for her. So he left, commenting that they were all rude. The girl remained alone in the room with her cigarette. Making a call, she ordered them to find out who leaked the recording and to kill the person responsible immediately. After saying this, she slammed her phone on the table. Indeed, she invited the blonde, but she didn't mind killing a few mortals now and then. This time, she would do it simply, brutally, and without scruples. She's determined to kill the blonde once and for all. At a restaurant, he looks at the attendant. She seems to be showing him the options available. Looking at the fried crabs on display, Lin Mo says that's what he ordered. Hearing what he said, the girl confirms that's correct. Lin Mo wants to know why he received something different then. She explains that it's a special menu prepared by the blonde and the cook had never seen so many refined ingredients before. To Lin Mo, it's completely unnecessary. Standing nearby, the blonde, visibly upset, said as she heard what he said. She explains that it's a delicacy from far away and she'd like his help identifying the ingredients. Since she asked for his help, Lin Mo reluctantly agrees. She claps her hands enthusiastically, delighted by his response. The blonde instructs the cook to bring the other dishes, as her friend won't eat there. Knowing that Lin Mo likes to eat in peace, she prepared an empty room for him to have his meal. In response, he simply says she doesn't need to do such meaningless things anymore. Hearing that, she grabs his arm and he glances at her from the corner of his eye. It's not meaningless to her. It's a gesture full of meaning. She's madly in love with him and hopes to deflower him one day. It's filled with meaning and numerous intentions. Hearing her words, he is a bit surprised, but then gives her a slight smile. If that's how it is, he's fine with it. As Lin Mo walks away, the blonde notices a pair of feet approaching. She's immediately surprised by what she sees. It's the brunette, inviting Lin Mo to play another game. The blonde steps between them, suggesting they start in the room she reserved for him, and if he wants to play with someone, he can play with her. Seeing this, the brunette comments that the blonde is always like that, assertive, carefree, and always causing trouble for others. She extends her hand and gestures around. There are several students watching what's happening because lunchtime gossip is irresistible. She explains that she did all this so Lin Mo could have peace, but all she's managed to do is draw even more attention to him. Not to mention that her body was hurt because of the blonde. After hearing that, the blonde shouted that enough was enough. She shooed the onlookers away, telling them they had nothing to gain by watching and didn't need to stay. After that, she sighed deeply. She finally admitted that she had analyzed her problem with her older sister and knew it had caused her pain. She was aware she had caused trouble for her and understood why she was hated. There was no way she was handing Lin Mo over to her rival. Nor did the brunette want to give up her chess partner. As the two argued, Lin Mo announced that he was leaving. The truth was he was deep in thought about the brunette's nature. Seeing him leave, the blonde tried to get him to stay. However, the brunette extended her arm in front of her. She asked her not to cause more trouble for Lin Mo. Yutang said she didn't care if she was a cultivator too, but she shouldn't use the game as an excuse to stay close to him. If she liked him, fine, but she shouldn't interfere. However, she was getting close to Lin Mo just to take revenge on the blonde and hurt his feelings. Things would get complicated for her. But that wasn't the case at all. Completely blushing, the brunette said she didn't like him. They were just chess partners, nothing more. Hearing this, the blonde let go of the brunette's collar. Since she was being honest and had good intentions, the blonde would let it go. She made it clear that the brunette was no competition for her because she could offer Lin Mo everything, and she wondered what the brunette could offer him. Without hesitation, the brunette said she could play chess with him, which silenced Yutang. Holding her head in her hands, she said she couldn't deal with it anymore. Now she was alone on the terrace without her friend. She reached her hand out across the chessboard. Playing alone was definitely boring. She had played alone for decades, but this time it was the dullest session of her life. She looked attentively at the terrace door. After what happened, he still hadn't arrived. And she remembered what the blonde had said to her about what she could offer Lin Mo. Indeed, she didn't know how to answer that. All she could offer was a cold turris and a game of chess. Since she had recovered some of her strength, the cold didn't bother her, and Lin Mo, being just a mortal, had been playing with her in the cold without complaint. This left her in shock, as the venerable demon seemed to care about a mere mortal. But as a demon king, if she took the world for herself, she could offer everything to Lin Mo. While she was lost in thought, she heard the door open. She immediately went to see if it was Lin Mo arriving, but it was only a small creature. She didn't know what to think. The cultivators here were weak, and the only real threats were the immortal emperor and the demon's sword. Leaning on the railing, she thought some more. In thousands of years, she had never felt this way, anxious, and she wondered if he had gone to the room Yutang arranged. She figured that young people of this era were sensitive, and that maybe he had gone there because of what happened earlier. However, she didn't know why she was thinking about him so much. He was just a chess partner. What the blonde said had made her think. She didn't like him, and she hoped Lin Mo didn't misunderstand her feelings. But she decided she would explain herself soon to avoid any misunderstandings about how she felt. When he answered the phone, she introduced herself. He said he knew she was a good girl and would find someone better, then hung up the call. That was definitely not what she expected. Throwing the phone on the ground, she muttered that he should listen to people before jumping to conclusions. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.